Audio Jungle.
Task. Madam, do you mind repeating what you said? Task. Yes, but please don't tell anyone about this, especially my husband and my daughter. I understand. Then can we start now? It all started with a phone call. It was a call from my little sister. The call was made at night 3 days ago. Her condition was strange. Her teeth chattered, and it sounded like she forced the words out of her throat. I asked if she was sick, but she didn't answer me. She only kept repeating that she had been having this same dream over and over. Dream? Yes, a dream. She said that she often dreamed about waking up in the middle of the night, leaving her bed, walking down the stairs and stopping before the basement door of her building. It was very special and real. It was so real that it didn't feel like a dream. But your sister still described it as a dream. Why? Because her building doesn't even have a basement. The scariest thing is when she stood before the strange door, she had the urge to open it, and she disappeared. On the night she called me. So you came to me today because, Dr. Jiang. Yes, please continue. I dreamed of the door too, yesterday night. The recording ended, and the room fell into silence. Jiang Cheng sat before his office table and lowered his eyelids. The night newspaper of Rome City of that day sat on the table. Missing people report, Hu Yan, female 47, 160 cm tall. She has a square face and fair skin. Due to recent mental issues, she left home and disappeared at midnight on the 13th. She was last seen wearing a pink silk nightgown. If seen, please contact. His eyes skipped the contact info. On the left of the missing person report was a picture of a middle-aged woman. It was this woman who made the recording with him yesterday. Jiang Cheng didn't have the habit of reading the papers. The police dropped off the newspaper about an hour ago. The police followed the clues and discovered that Hu Yan had come to him one day before she disappeared. He told him honestly about Hu Yan's mental status and even told them the story she told him. He even gave them his files and the recording as evidence. After finishing the interview, the pair of officers, one male and one female, left. The female officer with the ponytail turned to take a few more glances at Jiang Cheng. This man who was about her age was too calm, no matter when he was interviewed or when he was telling the absurd story. Jiang Cheng stood up to send them out politely. Then, he retook his head. Fingers tapped against the keyboard. Everyone resumed like normal. Night approached, and neons lit up the city. Jiang Cheng glanced at the time at the corner of his desktop. He stood up and walked to his office door. He closed the outer glass door and then locked the inner door from the inside. After that, he took the time to brew some coffee. He walked to the sofa with his cup of coffee and sat down. He bought the sofa for his clients. Madame Hu Yan from yesterday and the two officers from an hour ago both sat on the sofa. The luster of the leather had lost its sheen. The armrests were cracked. Jiang Cheng reached into the gap between the seats and fished out a recording pen. The blinking light showed that the pen was still recording. He fiddled with the device using his fingers, and the officer's voice drifted out. Then, his voice followed. Jiang Cheng sipped on the coffee as he listened to the recording. Once the cup was empty, his conversation with the officers was also over. When he stood up from the sofa, his expression didn't change. He cleaned the coffee cup and dried it on the rack. He dried his hands and walked back to his table. When he passed the couch, he picked up the recorder. Business was slow recently, so Jiang Cheng had a deep impression of Hu Yan. Even though her story was strange, for Jiang Cheng, who had interacted with a number of patients with mild to medium paranoia, the structure of her story was more important. From his perspective, a normal patient would emphasize certain details, thus confusing them to grab other people's attention. Hu Yan's descriptions were complete, and the details were on point. She even remembered she accidentally stepped on her daughter's fuzzy slippers in her dream. The police also brought Jiang Cheng some new info. During their conversation, Jiang Cheng managed to surmise that Hu Yan's disappearance had to do with one of her family members. In Hu Yan's story, her little sister disappeared before she did. These two details confirmed the authenticity of Hu Yan's sister's disappearance. On top of that was the missing person report given out by Hu Yan's family. It said that Hu Yan had left her house in her thin nightgown. It was deep autumn. Based on Jiang Cheng's understanding of the madam, she was not someone who'd do something so stupid. This made Jiang Cheng believe that things were not so simple. Therefore, to preserve his brain cells for tomorrow and to protect his handsome face, Jiang Cheng put on a beauty gown and went to sleep. His office was split into 2 floors. The first floor was for business, and the second floor was his living space. The space around 30 cubic meters was somehow split into 2 rooms. As one went up the narrow stairs, one would enter Jiang Cheng's living room. Beyond it was the bedroom. There was no bed in the bedroom, only a thin mattress on the ground. Jiang Cheng lay on the mattress. The comforter was pulled to his chin as he slept soundly. After some time, Jiang Cheng's eyes flipped open. He stared at the ceiling as his pupils wavered. Moments later, his eyes narrowed into slits. He slowly sat up in bed. What was going on? His mind was awake, and he could feel every part of his body, but he couldn't control his body. Strange palpitations surged from his heart like something had been opened. First, his left leg left his bed, and then his right left. He stood up robotically. While his brain was going into overdrive, his body moved on its own. Forward, left, right, left, right. He walked to the bedroom door like a zombie, then the living room. His legs carried him down the wooden stairs. The old wooden steps made no creaking sound. Not only the stairs were silent, Jiang Cheng could not hear anything. The night was deadly silent. His eyes took in everything within his limited vision. The situation was dangerous and absurd. In the night, the familiar space looked unfamiliar. As his body took the last step, he saw a door standing before him. The door was pure black. The door was embedded in the wall. Down the distance was a bus station. It was empty. There was no bus or workers on duty. The sky was cloudy and raining slightly. A small group of people gathered around the spacious platform. There were around 5 of them. They should be travelers. The age of the station was visible from the exposed brick platform and the decrepit roof that was leaking in places. This meant that the travelers all gathered at the same corner to avoid the rain. Currently, the travelers were all looking in the same direction. In the rain, about 30 meters away, there was a man with an umbrella. The man was motionless and had remained like that for 10 minutes already. As the travelers whispered to each other, the man suddenly moved towards the platform. As he got closer, they confirmed that he was a man. He had a balanced body and a handsome face. He wore a jacket that was several sizes too large for him and a pair of patterned sleeping pants and cartoon fuzzy slippers. The slippers were drenched from the rain. They squished with each step that he took. Jiang Cheng, who arrived there in his dream, put away the umbrella and looked at the people gathered before him. A tiny and pure-looking girl asked carefully, "Are you new?" "Don't ask stupid questions." A muscular man with a bushy beard glanced at the girl. His eyes lingered on Jiang Cheng's fuzzy slippers for a moment before moving away. He looked at Jiang Cheng like he was assessing his prey. Then, he added, "An interesting newbie. He's so calm even though he's here." There were 5 of them in total. Jiang Cheng temporarily didn't see anyone else. Other than the pure girl and the bearded man, there was a woman around 35 with a pair of thin lips. The woman had a beauty spot next to her lips, and her looks were average. There was a balding man around 50 who looked rather salacious. Lastly, there was a young man who dressed like a government worker. His hair was smoothed down in place. Different from the others, the young man appeared like he had just cried. There were traces of tears at the corners of his eyes. His body was also bent over abnormally. Jiang Cheng scanned their faces before settling on the bearded man. Where is this? We call it the dream realm because every visitor came here through their dream. The man answered, through a black iron door that doesn't exist. Jiang Cheng nodded. This was similar to his experience. What do we need to do? Based on the scenario, find the clues and complete the mission. Try to survive. He pointed at the rain and said, the dream realm is merely what the first people who arrived here called this place. What is this place and why is it here? We can't answer you because we also don't know. You only need to know that once you open that door in your dream, you might see a village, a skyscraper, a forest, a snowfield, or even a wasteland. Everything that might appear in real life might show up behind the door. Everything in real life might show up behind the door? Jiang Cheng asked to confirm. Yes. Then, how is this place different from our world, or is the world behind the door our world? Jiang Cheng put forth a logical yet difficult question. Will you find another similar version of yourself in the real world? The bearded man said gruffly. His words sounded absurd, but Jiang Cheng understood it. Do you mean someone had encountered their doppelganger in the world behind the door? Yes. It was unclear if the man felt fear from talking about it or he felt it was a waste of time to discuss that with a newbie, but he ended the subject. So, will we return to the real world once we complete the mission? The man nodded and turned back to the rain. The rain turned heavier. The whole world was a palette of gray. Newbie. The woman with the beauty spot suddenly turned to him and said, "You will be wiped out in the real world if you die here. Aren't you scared?" To be precise, you'll disappear in real life, Jiang Cheng corrected. The woman slowly widened her eyes as she studied Jiang Cheng with interest. You're both new, but you're much more interesting than this trash who only knows how to cry. She gave the young man a side eye. The disgust in her eyes was plain to see. The young man shivered from her gaze. The woman scoffed before she turned back to Jiang Cheng. If you survive this scenario, I don't mind being friends with you. Jiang Cheng ignored her and turned to the bearded man. The man stood at the edge of the rain. His eyes wandered the horizon, and his brows were knotted in worry. You're waiting for someone, Jiang Cheng concluded. The man turned around and gasped in shock. How did you know? I also know the person you're waiting for is a fatty with amazing dexterity. Newbie, I'm more and more interested in you. The man's expression was beyond amazed. There's indeed someone who is still not here. That's why the mission hasn't started, but I want to know, how did you tell? And you knew details like the person is a fatty who is dexterous? Jiang Cheng didn't answer the man but walked to his side. He turned to a direction outside the station, cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Hey, it's safe here. Come out now. We're waiting for you." As he finished, a man bounced through the rain from a few meters away. As everyone looked on in awe, he raced towards the platform. His rotund body floated over the puddles and leaped into the air before landing gracefully on the platform. Everyone was thinking the same thing, what a dexterous fatty. Once the fatty landed, he stared at the jacket Jiang Cheng was wearing. He was only wearing a khaki shirt and it was soaked. He was shivering from the cold. Can you? No, Jiang Cheng instantly interrupted the fatty and pulled the jacket tighter around his body. What is going on? The balding man asked from the confusion. We met on the road. I came to scout the way for him. The price is a jacket and an umbrella, Jiang Cheng admitted. The shivering fatty didn't look so well, but no one paid him any attention. Only the girl pitied him and lent him a thin shawl to put around his neck. All right, finally, everyone should be here. The muscular man took the leadership role naturally. The mission is about to start. Everyone, be ready. As if in response to the man, a ray of light came from the distance. As the light approached, it pierced through the darkness. A brand new luxury bus slowly eased into the station. Talk less and observe more. Make sure everything is safe before you do anything. Do not go off on your own. Before the bus door opened, the muscular man lowered his voice to whisper a few more notes. The woman with the mole couldn't stand the man's attitude, so she chided, "The rewards are proportional to the risks. If you want something, you have to pay something." At that moment, the bus door opened. A youngster jumped out. He had a crew cut and wore a blue shirt and bleached jeans. He looked in his early 20s. His mouth moved like he was chewing on gum. "Sorry for the wait, dear travelers. I was delayed by the weather. I'm so sorry." The youngster gave everyone a surprise once she spoke. She was a woman. The woman continued her self-introduction. "It is my honor to be the guide of your journey this time. My surname is Jiang. You can call me Xiao Jiang or Guy Jiang." "Guy Jiang," someone responded. No one called her Xiao Jiang. "All right, let's get in the car," Guy Jiang said politely. "The weather means that the journey will be slow, so we better keep a close eye on the time." Everyone got on the bus in the order of left to right. First, it was the muscular. Then, the woman with the mole, the young government worker, the balding middle-aged man, Jiang Cheng, the fatty, and lastly, the innocent girl. They realized there were other travelers when they got on the bus. A couple sat near the back. The girl was reading a magazine. Her boyfriend leaned against the window to rest as he listened to the music on his headphones. There was also a middle-aged woman and a boy sitting right behind the driver. They should be mother and son. However, the son appeared to be sick. His eyes wandered aimlessly. When Jiang Cheng walked past him, he noticed the boy's fingers were bound with bandages. Guy Jiang advised everyone to find a seat. As the bus door closed, she sat on the right of the driver. The muscular man sat behind the mother and son. The woman with the mole sat behind Guy Jiang. Jiang Cheng chose to sit 2 rows behind the couple. Once he sat down, a giant shadow came over. "Brother, let's sit together." Jiang Cheng lifted his head. As he expected, it was the fatty. He answered, "Sure, but I prefer the aisle seat." "That's fine. I can squeeze inside." Half a minute later, Fatty managed to squeeze into the seat. However, he still took up so much space that Jiang Cheng had to lean out slightly. The male worker tried to sit with the others a few times, but they all ignored him. In the end, it was the innocent girl who let him sit next to him. The middle-aged man sat in the last row on his own. Jiang Cheng turned back to look at him. He realized the man's face was extremely dark. "Brother, can you tell me what's going on?" Fatty leaned over to whisper, "I was sleeping, and then I was here." Jiang Cheng relayed the story he got from the muscular man to Fatty after adding a few more details. Fatty was so scared that he almost cried. "If I die here, my whole family will die in real life?" "That's right. How come you don't look scared at all?" Jiang Cheng turned around and replied in a straight tone, "Because I'm an orphan." The journey was peaceful, so peaceful that the male government worker thought he could survive this. However, the sudden break shattered his dream. The inertia broke the glass window, and the shards flew into the bus. The bus ran into something. The young man curled up in his seat and couldn't stop screaming. He didn't stop until the muscular man dragged him out of the bus and smacked him on his face twice. "If you don't want to die, shut the fuck up," he threatened. The male worker rolled up on the ground. He got up after some time and hid at the back of the team. The bus had crashed into a tree. The driver came down to check. The rain had caused half of the road to cave in. It caused the bus to slip and steer off the path. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured. At most, there were just cuts from the shards. The bus was stuck, but Jiang Cheng looked around. It was no exaggeration to say that they were in the middle of nowhere. There was only a straight path forward that led to the unknown. The rain had lightened, but it was still raining. "Travelers, I'm so sorry." Ai Jing came over, rubbing her hands. There were bits of blood on her arms. "It looks like the trip today is not going to happen." She had already apologized twice in the few hours they had met, but they knew she didn't mean it. To quote the muscular man, she was only an NPC. "How about this? I know there's a bungalow inside the forest. You can go there to seek shelter from the rain while we try to source another vehicle." When we find one, we'll go get you. Jiang pointed at a forest not far away. Even Jiang Cheng knew this was not a good choice. However, the muscular man and the others accepted it steadily. They walked towards the forest. The real mission had started. The atmosphere became more serious. Wait, Jiang called after them. She ran back into the bus to grab some umbrellas. Don't catch the cold. Thank you. The road was so muddy that if they were not careful, they'd slip. The group walked for half an hour before a 3-story bungalow appeared before them. The bungalow was sheltered by layers of foliage. It was very hard to find it in the forest. Is this place really habitable? The innocent girl asked softly. The bungalow was old. It hadn't been cleaned in years. Piles of fallen leaves collected around the front door. You can stay outside if you want. The muscular man walked through the rain towards the bungalow. Jiang Cheng looked at the man. His mood seemed to be shifting. Everyone knew that the girl was only complaining for the sake of it. However, Jiang Cheng picked up the scent of fear from the two's complaints and annoyance. After the rest followed, Fatty, who shared the umbrella with Jiang Cheng, urged, "What are you waiting for, brother? Let's go." "Okay." No one answered the door. The muscular man gave it a soft push, but the thick wooden door eased open a gap easily. The door was not locked. When the front door swung open fully, the group had a clear view of the interior. The spacious living room looked old, but it didn't appear to be unusable. A thin layer of dust gathered on the ground and the rectangular dining table. The plush carpet was laid under the luxurious sofas. The inside of the fireplace was dark and black. It appeared like there were ashes from burnt wood. Night had taken over this world. They shouldn't be able to see things so clearly, but the crystal chandeliers above their heads still shone. The refracted light cut the travelers into pieces. The bungalow still had a power supply. "We should look around first." The muscular man pulled back his gaze on the chandelier. "Stick together and don't split up." Soon, they found a lot of food in the dining room's fridge. There were vegetables, grains, meat, and even snacks. There was a basket of eggs in the deepest part of the fridge. They looked fresh, like they were placed there 1 hour ago. However, based on dust on the ground, that was impossible. The group's focus was not on that either. The man looked at the food, and his expression didn't change. Eventually, he merely said, "At least we won't die from starvation." Suddenly, the sound of water came from behind them. Jiang Cheng looked around and saw the woman with the mole twist on the faucet. Clean water flowed out. She turned the faucet off and looked at the others before saying casually, "We won't die from thirst either." After that, they found a lot of wood in a small room that felt like a storage. The woods were piled neatly on top of each other. The second floor was the living space. There was a main bedroom, a study, and 2 small bedrooms. At the end of the corridor was a locked room. It was clear that both the muscular man and the woman with the mole were interested in the locked room. However, neither of them made a move to fiddle with the lock. The stairs that led to the 3rd floor were blocked by a locked black iron door. The muscular man tried pushing it, but the door didn't budge. The group of people retreated to the 1st floor living room. The group had stayed more than half a day in this world. They were cold and hungry, especially since they had just trekked through the forest. The muscular man assigned everyone jobs. He and the middle-aged man would go grab the wood to start a fire. The woman, Jiang Cheng, and Fatty would make dinner. The innocent woman and the young man would clean up the place. Jiang Cheng looked at the table of ingredients in confusion. The woman smirked and then walked away. Thankfully, Fatty was a good cook. He showcased good knife skills and cooking skills. Soon, fragrant dishes were served. He even kindly fried an egg for everyone. The area around the living room sofa had been cleaned. Everyone sat around the fireplace and ate, holding their bowls. The fire in the fireplace crackled. After dinner, they started to discuss the mission. However, the discussion only ended with the muscular man and the woman with the mole arguing. This was inevitable. The mission had just started, and they had very few clues. The two of them were also the most opinionated. Based on the way they carried themselves, they had completed several missions already. The night deepened. The muscular man wanted everyone to sleep in the living room, but the woman insisted that they use the second-floor bedrooms. Her reason was that there might be clues there. In the end, the two left with dissatisfaction. The innocent girl chose to go with the woman. They walked towards the stairs. As they were about to get on the steps, the male government worker rushed to join him. Jiang Cheng believed that the two slaps from the muscular man had scarred him. Just like that, the muscular man, the middle-aged, balding man, Jiang Cheng and Fatty stayed in the living room while the other three went upstairs to the bedroom. Idiots! The muscular man looked at them and cursed under his breath. The people in the living room were all dudes. There were 3 long sofas. One of them would take a sofa each, and the last person would stay up to keep vigil. The muscular man offered to take the first shift. Then, he took out a pocket watch from his chest. He flipped it on and placed it on the small table in the middle. It's around 10 p.m. now. The sun will rise around 6 a.m. That's 8 hours. There are 4 people here. Each person will stay on watch for 2 hours each. That way, everyone will have ample time to rest. No one objected to it. The muscular man's arrangement was very reasonable. Just as the man finished, he saw Fatty look at the watch on the table with a strange gaze. Stop looking. The time is not accurate. The man explained, any watches or clocks brought into the dream realm would be broken. The only function it has now is to record time. The time on the watch was 4:18 p.m. That was clearly untrue. Since Jiang Cheng and Fatty were both new, the muscular man added more explanations. He told them what kind of situation happening in the dream realm that violated normal scientific knowledge could be expected. What they needed to do was to look through the anomalies, search for the hidden clues, solve the mission, and leave the dream realm. Jiang Cheng raised his hand. The muscular man looked at him and asked, "Do you have a question? Since you've already escaped from the dream realm before, why do you come back?" Because the dream realm will always be present. Once you've opened that dream, it will always be there for you until you die. By the way, the muscular man remembered something. The full name of the dream realm is the Nightmare Realm Barrier. Barrier? Yes, it is like a barrier wall that separates the real world and the false world. No matter how heavily you've injured yourself in the dream realm, as long as you still have a breath left, you will be returned to real life unscathed. He chuckled bitterly. Isn't that an appropriate name? Then, how can we fully leave this realm barrier? The one who spoke was the balding man. His voice was hoarse and gave people an uncomfortable feeling. The muscular man glanced at him and said, "Don't ask stupid questions. You're not new. You should know that your question is similar to asking which timeline this world is on. It's an unanswerable question." The middle-aged man darkened his face and stopped talking. Jiang Cheng raised his hand again. The muscular man was helpless as he turned to him. "Just ask if you have a question. There's no need to raise your hand. We should be sometime between the end of March and the middle of September in 2006, Jiang Cheng said sincerely. The muscular man was startled. The person who reacted similarly was the middle-aged man with his head lowered. Fatty also looked at Jiang Cheng in confusion. They had no idea what he was talking about. "How can you tell?" the muscular man asked. Jiang Cheng took out a small bag from his pocket. When he moved it closer, the rest could see that it was a small bag of bread. Jiang Cheng turned the bag over and pointed at a small detail. Production date 18 March 2006. Preservation period, 6 months. Jiang Cheng opened the bag with everyone watching. He tore off a piece of the bread and tossed it into his mouth. He chewed for a while and swallowed. He thought about it and commented, "It has a nice chew and is quite fluffy. The moisture is still there. Considering it was stored in the fridge, I believe we're in the earlier months of 2006. The middle-aged man turned to look at the muscular back, but was glared back. The encounter ended awkwardly. The muscular man stood up and offered to start the watch. He urged the rest to sleep early. The muscular man's vigil would go from 10 p.m. to 12 midnight. There were 6 hours left after that. After discussing with the rest, Jiang Cheng would stay up from 12 midnight to 2 a.m. The middle-aged would take the shift from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Fatty would stay up from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. The muscular man found a thick blanket and settled down beside the fireplace. The flame cast his face occasionally in the shadow. Jiang Cheng lay on the sofa next to Fatty's. The middle-aged man stayed on the other side of the living room, away from them. "Brother," Fatty stretched his neck over to whisper, "are you asleep?" Jiang Cheng turned around to show him his back. Jiang Cheng stayed up for the 2 hours the muscular man took the vigil. Other than the sound of wood burning, nothing happened. When it was time, the muscular man walked over to wake up Jiang Cheng. "Be on alert when you're on the watch. Shout to wake us up if something happens." The muscular man added as if in worry, "Those things have a higher chance of happening after midnight." "What things?" Jiang Cheng stood up to ask. The muscular man's face dimmed, but he still answered in a whisper, "Supernatural things." After a quick exchange, the man took the sofa Jiang Cheng vacated. Jiang Cheng walked over to the fireplace and continued the shift. The surrounding was quiet. Other than Fatty's occasional snores, there was no other sound. The middle-aged man and the muscular man had their eyes closed. They looked like they were asleep, but Jiang Cheng suspected they were just pretending, like how he had been earlier. 2 hours later, Jiang Cheng walked to the other side of the living room and shook the middle-aged man awake. They didn't have much time to talk. Jiang Cheng went back to sleep while the middle-aged man took a few sips from the bottle of mineral water and went to the fireplace. He added some firewood to the pile and sat before the fireplace. He held the pocket watch in his palm. The middle-aged man's experience was not as bountiful as the muscular man and the woman, but he had escaped twice from the mission. Therefore, he knew about the supernatural things the man mentioned and how scary they were. Similar to Jiang Cheng's guess, the middle-aged man had been awake since the muscular man held watch. He was wary of bad things that might happen. 1.5 hours passed, and nothing happened. During this period, he added more wood to the fire. The fire burned brightly. It warmed the middle-aged man as if it could chase the chill in his heart away. The 2 hours were soon up. His shift was over. He slowly stood up and turned to look out the window. Through the gap in the curtain, the sky appeared brighter. People in the nightmare were averse to the night and loved the day. The middle-aged man was no exception. As he worked the kinks in his limbs before calling Fatty, he suddenly had the urge to pee. It even caught him off guard. He stared at the bottle of water. Did he drink too much? The arrival of dawn made him feel better. He turned around. The toilet was in the corner of the living room. It was less than 20 meters from where he was. His eyes focused on the toilet, slowly changing. The sense of alertness slowly subsided. Following it was an inexplicable sense of familiarity and security. He licked his lips and turned to look at his sleeping mates. He did a mental calculation. If he took a toilet break, he would come back in time to wake up Fatty. It should be fine. He pushed on his glasses and slowly moved towards the toilet. He carefully opened the door and left it open. After all, it was all males in the living room. He gave it a good shake and felt better when it was over. To be honest, both his stamina and energy were at their limits after 6 hours of staying awake. After all, he was not young anymore. The middle-aged man sighed as he studied his tired face in the mirror. He removed his glasses, twisted open the faucet, and splashed his face with cold water. The chill cut through his senses. It woke him up. Just as he was about to take a second splash, he glanced from the corner of his eyes and realized there was someone standing behind him in the mirror reflection. The person sidled behind him without making any sound. "Who is it?" The shock lasted less than a second. Soon, the man calmed down. Even though he didn't have his glasses on and couldn't see the person's face clearly, the rotund body exposed the man's identity. "It's me." After hearing Fatty's voice, the man calmed down. Then, he groused, "Say something next time. Do not appear behind me so suddenly." The middle-aged man wiped his face with his sleeve. Then, he put his glasses on. He turned around as he shook the water off his hands. The moment he fully turned around, the chill crawled from his feet to his head. Ice crystals seemed to form in his blood vessels. There was no one behind him. Where was Fatty? His eyes reddened. Subconsciously, he wanted to turn around to check the mirror, but he failed because something landed on his shoulders. The sun rose. The three who stayed on the second floor had the same system as the people on the first floor. A person took a shift to keep watch. The male worker at the corner of the bedroom just wanted to stretch and yawn when he was interrupted by a shrill scream. He was so shocked that he almost fell down from the chair. The woman and the girl who were sleeping on the bed were woken up by the scream. They shared a look and then rushed downstairs. Jiang Cheng and the muscular man stood beside Fatty. Fatty was slumped on the ground. It was clear where the scream came from. The three of them looked at the toilet in the corner. There was fear, anxiety, and confusion. The woman with the mole looked around. When she failed to find the middle-aged man, her heart was prepared. She shook the innocent girl's hand off and walked to the toilet alone. The toilet door hung open. She stood at the door and took a quick glance inside. Even though she was prepared, she sucked in a cold breath. The middle-aged man stood rigidly before the mirror. His body faced the door and away from the mirror. However, his head was twisted 180 degrees to look at the mirror behind him. In the mirror reflection, the middle-aged man's eyes bulged like they were about to fall out of the sockets. After they calmed down, the man and then the muscular man moved to examine the middle-aged man. Jiang Cheng followed after watching for a few seconds. He stood outside the door to look in. The woman moved her hand away from the man's neck and concluded, a giant force snapped his neck. This was something evident. He was given the fright of his life right before his death, the muscular man added as he looked at the middle-aged man's eyes. After inspecting the body, the three exited the toilet. No one felt good dealing with such a creepy corpse. The time of death is within the last 3 hours. The muscular man glanced at the pocket watch and said confidently, "So, it was between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. How can you tell?" The man glanced at the innocent girl who asked the question. He told them about the night watch shift and showed her the watch. It showed that 7 hours had passed. The person on duty after the victim was Fatty. Fatty had to pee before he took his shift, and it was he who discovered the body when he went to use the toilet. At that moment, Fatty crawled up shakily from the ground. He asked about the middle-aged man. The muscular man sighed, closed the toilet door, and led everyone back to the fireplace. As a newbie, Jiang Cheng had said basically nothing. He had been listening and analyzing. It was mostly the woman with the mole and the muscular man who did all the talking. Through the conversation, Jiang Cheng gleaned that no one would die for no reason in this world. The victim must have triggered some kind of taboo, and this taboo would most likely be the key clue to solving the mission. What did he do that we didn't? The male worker curled up between Jiang Cheng and the innocent girl. He was clearly frightened. He didn't want to die suddenly like the middle-aged man. The innocent girl frowned and said, "Could it be that he had used the first floor toilet? Is that the hidden taboo of this mission? That can't be." Fatty squatted there, hugged his knees, and whispered, "I used that toilet too, when we were searching the house yesterday." Jiang Cheng looked at Fatty and said, "Then you better be careful. Your neck might be thick, but someone can still snap it with enough force." Fatty almost cried. The muscular man was not satisfied with Jiang Cheng's attitude, but he only shook his head. They had all used the first floor toilet, so it made no sense that the middle-aged man was the only one who died. "Maybe it's not our turn yet?" The woman with the mole chuckled darkly. "As you know, the ghost rarely kills consecutively in a short amount of time. The muscular man glared at the woman, but he didn't counter her. So those things do exist. Jiang Cheng's guess was verified. The door that appeared in his dream was supernatural, and it was normal for ghosts to appear in a supernatural event. So, we're fighting ghosts and not humans? The male worker's face paled. Everyone ignored him again. Since someone has died, this also means that this bungalow is our destination. The so-called trip is a lie. The appearance of that bus is to send us here. The innocent girl looked around. The issue is with this bungalow. What can the issue be? The innocent girl stared at Fatty, who asked the question and answered. For example, something bad could have happened here before. The bungalow looked luxurious, and it showed no signs of being damaged. It was indeed suspicious to have it abandoned just like this. Jiang Cheng agreed with the girl's assessment. The muscular man walked to the front door, grabbed the doorknob, and shook it hard. The door didn't budge. We're locked in. The Ma tried thrice before turning around to say, "It looks like this is really our mission venue. Before solving the mission here, we can't leave this place. Since we've confirmed the location, we should split up to look for clues. It's already daylight. There shouldn't be any danger." Regardless, the middle-aged man's death was a warning bell, especially for the three newbies. To increase efficiency, they split into groups with a newbie led by an experienced survivor. Fatty paired up with the muscular man. The male worker stayed with the woman with the mole. Jiang Cheng joined the innocent girl. For the sake of safety, the search zone was limited to the first floor. The muscular man's group would handle the area near the front door and the living room. The woman and the worker would search the garage, which was slightly out of the way. Jiang Cheng and the innocent girl would focus on the kitchen and the dining room. Everyone was within each other's line of sight so they could keep an eye on each other. With the earlier experience, the search this time was more thorough. Half an hour later, the three groups gathered around the fireplace again. By then, the sky was fully bright. "We found this in the garage." The woman took out a thick hemp rope. A section had an eye-catching red on it. The muscular man took it over and gave it a yank. Then, he sniffed it. "It's blood." He looked up at the woman. The woman nodded. "I also found this behind a roll of wood." She opened her left hand. In the middle of her palm was a light green brooch. It had a maple leaf shape. It felt like the owner was a kind girl. A girl was once tied up in the garage. "What did you find?" The woman turned to the muscular man. "Come with me." The man walked to the front door, and the rest followed him. Standing beside the door, the muscular man touched around the wall. Jiang Cheng noticed a light blue switch hidden on the wall. The switch was hidden in the oil painting beside the door. It hid perfectly well in the painted blue sky. When the man pressed the switch, the wall on the right of the door opened a crack. There was a very well-hidden shoe cupboard inside. The cupboard had 3 layers. The third layer was untouched, but the partitions of the first and second layers had been shattered. All kinds of shoes were mixed together. After some arranging, there were 2 pairs of male leather shoes, a pair of red female heels, and 3 pairs of female flats. The woman with the mole picked out 1 pair of flats and placed it beside the heels. These should belong to the same person. The remaining 2 pairs clearly belonged to a younger girl. All the shoe sizes matched. The third layer had a pair of male sports shoes sitting on it. After comparison, it was far smaller than the male leather shoes. From what we can see so far, there was a family of 4 who once lived here. The father, the mother, and a son and a daughter. The innocent girl said, "This coincides with the layout of the bedrooms upstairs. The main bedroom is for the parents, and the 2 smaller bedrooms are for the kids." Jiang Cheng had been on the 2nd floor yesterday. It was, indeed, as the girl said. The separation of the boys' and girls' bedrooms was easy to tell. One was decorated with various plushes. The other had the wall covered with posters of various military weapons. There was even a military magazine on the table. The owner was a military fan. Then, the other two groups turned their attention to Jiang Cheng and the innocent girl. This family didn't have a peaceful family life. We found many broken plates and glasses in the rubbish cans. Some of them have blood on them, Jiang Cheng said. The girl added, there are scratches on the wooden stair railings. We suspect they are left behind by nail scratches. This was a very important clue. They came to the stairs. With the girl pointing it out, they did discover the traces. The muscular man touched it, and his expression shifted. Yes, these are scratch marks. A family of 4, an unhappy family, broken plates, scratch marks, and a tied-up girl. No matter how they parsed it, this looked like a family tragedy. A tormented girl once lived here. Then, what should we do next? The male government worker grumbled, save that poor girl? No matter what happened here in the past, it is already in the past, and the change can't be changed. The woman with the mole said, what we should do is find the truth and complete the mission. But haven't we found the truth? The muscular man shouted angrily, are you dumb? How was the girl tortured? Who was her tormentor? Is the girl still alive? How can we end the mission without knowing these basic details? After being yelled at by the muscular man, the male worker shivered and stopped talking. The innocent girl looked at the male worker with pity. He was too weak and dumb. It was hard for him to survive on the mission. Even though he had survived once, the next time grew. Everyone turned to the source of the sound. Fatty held his stomach embarrassedly. Forget it. We've searched the entire first floor. We should prepare for breakfast. After a high-tension morning, the muscular man was hungry too. As everyone prepared to make lunch, a voice came from behind them. We haven't searched that place. Jiang Cheng pointed at the toilet where the middle-aged man's corpse was. I believe there will be clues there. Hearing that, everyone's expression turned severe. Everyone knew Jiang Cheng was right, but it was hard to persuade themselves to examine the toilet. After all, someone died there. Perhaps entering the toilet would trigger the death taboo. When they searched the place earlier, everyone avoided that place. In the end, rationality won over fear. The muscular man took a deep breath. He's right, there might be clues there. Even though there might be risks, we'll all die if we don't solve the mission. The woman with the mole rarely did not object to it. She clearly understood the situation too, but she still said annoyingly, then, who'd go? Jiang Cheng cut in, who has been to the first floor toilet? Everyone raised their hands. Jiang Cheng counted and then continued, then, everyone has the chance of having triggered the taboo. This is more than just searching for clues. This is also fighting for survival. The innocent girl frowned. You're not saying that we should search the toilet together, right? The muscular man scratched his beard and nodded. The space is very small. If too many people fit in it, it's very hard to move. That's right. Jiang Cheng nodded. So I suggest a group of 2. Then who volunteers? The male worker at the back asked. No one spoke. All right, we can decide it via drawing. It's the fairest for everyone. Jiang Cheng shrugged. Okay, I agree. After some preparations, Jiang Cheng took out a few notes. 2 of them were shorter. Jiang Cheng crumpled all of them before everyone. He placed them in his palm. The ones who get the shorter paper will go into the toilet. Everyone is fine with that, right? Yes, but Fatty looked at the paper rolls and swallowed. Why are there only 5 notes? There are 6 of us. The others noticed this problem and looked at Jiang Cheng with suspicion. Because I'm not participating, Jiang Cheng admitted. Everyone was stunned and then became enraged. The muscular man yelled, why? Who gave you the right? Because I've not used the toilet. You've been here 1 day and 1 night. You drank so much water. How could you not have used the toilet? The male owner yelled loudly as if he had found the vent he needed. You are merely trying to wiggle out of this. Just send him in alone. The woman with the mole stared at Jiang Cheng with unfriendliness. She scoffed. You have to pay to be cunning here. I know, Jiang Cheng said evenly, but I really have not entered the toilet, and I have proof. He raised his finger to point at the window. A wind blew and lifted a corner of the curtain to expose the two bottles behind it. One was full, and the other was half full. They contained light yellow liquid. It shone under the dawn sun. Is that the male worker's eyes widened? That's right. Jiang Cheng nodded and admitted with embarrassment. I was scared to use the toilet because it was too dark, so The muscular man looked at Jiang Cheng with complication. The woman, male worker, the innocent girl. Fatty, you are so cunning. Since Jiang Cheng had not used the toilet and thus hadn't triggered the potential taboo, no one had anything to say. The other five drew their lots. Jiang Cheng observed from the side. It was the muscular man and the male worker who were picked. When the two opened the toilet door, the middle-aged man's corpse was gone. The toilet was small, so it was not possible to hide the dead body of a middle-aged man. This is not our normal world, the woman behind them said. It's normal to encounter inexplicable things. Get used to it. The muscular man didn't look surprised. The poor thing was the male worker. He hugged the door and cried until he was kicked into the toilet by the muscular man. The others waited out. The search was very efficient. They exited the toilet after 5 minutes. The muscular man held a white paper towel. They closed the toilet door and walked to the living room. The muscular man spread the paper open. It had a strand of hair inside. I found this inside the bathtub. It wasn't there yesterday. The muscular man was very careful. He didn't use his hand to touch the hair. The hair was long. It was probably from a female. Could it have belonged to the tortured girl? The innocent girl analyzed the situation. The girl died from torture, and she morphed into a ghost. She was the one who murdered the middle-aged man before dawn. Her analysis was reasonable. That's possible, but we need evidence to back it up. The muscular man's presence weakened after he left the toilet. One could even see cold sweat on his forehead. Jiang Cheng knew the man was not as calm as he presented. We should take a break to eat first, someone suggested. The cooking was left to Fatty, and the innocent girl helped prepare the ingredients. Soon, the delicious meal was served. Even in that situation, the food was cleared. This proved Fatty's capability as a cook. Are you a chef in real life? The muscular man's attitude towards Fatty softened after he sipped the warm soup. No, Fatty scratched his head. I took on odd jobs. I've done quite a lot of things. What is everyone's occupation in real life? It's a kind of destiny for us to gather here. The muscular man put down the bowl and introduced himself again. The name's Manly. I'm a bodyguard. My name is Xiaoyu. I work at an insurance company, the male worker whispered. I'm Chen Xiaomin. I'm currently in college to study law, the innocent girl said. It was the woman with the mole's turn. Everyone thought she'd scoff at them, but she said slowly, you can call me Sister Nguyen. I'm older than all of you. I work, she chuckled mysteriously, I'm in sales. Everyone looked at her. The woman was clearly not a normal merchant. Who knew what kind of stock she was selling? However, no one dwelled on this for long. They all turned to Jiang Cheng. They were more curious about him than they were about Sister Nguyen. Jiang Cheng sat up straight and said directly, my name is Hao Shui. I'm a male model. A model? The innocent girl didn't seem to believe him. At a television station? Jiang Cheng slowly turned around and shot her a meaningful look. I work nights at KTV. Everyone looked at him in shock, but no one said anything. Everyone had their lives to live. Plus, Jiang Cheng did have the qualities to be in that field. The day in this world appeared to be short. They only chatted for a while before the sky darkened again. The muscular man walked to the window and looked around. Then, he walked back. It's not rain clouds. It's really getting dark. As he said, the sky dimmed half an hour later. The group sat around the fireplace. As they roasted the fire, they analyzed the clues they had already gathered. For the sake of safety, they moved the wood they found in the garage to the living room. That way, they didn't need to leave the living room to grab extra wood at night. Fatty sat closest to the fire and would occasionally toss a stick into the fireplace to keep it alive. The fire burned brightly. Chen Xiaoming insisted on her analysis. She believed it was the other family members who tortured the girl to her death. The ghost at the bungalow was the girl. She seemed to be stuck to this hypothesis. Her voice would rise whenever she talked about this. It was a great contrast to her usual, gentle style. Considering the fact that she was studying law, Jiang Cheng believed this was someone with a story. The rounds of discussion yielded no result. Instead, someone started to yawn. It appeared like Jiang Cheng wasn't the only one who didn't have a good night's sleep. Manly stood up to work his numbing legs. He suggested we should go to bed. His suggestion was quickly accepted. Since the middle-aged man died on the first floor, everyone decided to sleep on the second floor. Xie suggested in a whisper that everyone stay in the same room so that they could look after each other, but he was quickly shut down by Sister Nuan. She said they'd risk missing something. He widened his eyes in fear, but he didn't ask what Sister Nuan meant by something. Despite the discussion, everyone avoided the girls' bedroom. They planned to split into two groups. One would sleep in the boys' bedroom and the other in the main bedroom. Sister Nuan and Chen Xiaoming were both females, so they naturally stayed together. They chose the main bedroom because that was where they slept the night before. Fatty insisted on staying with Jiang Cheng. Therefore, they took the boys' bedroom. The remainder were Manly and Xie. Both of them wanted to stay with Sister Nuan because she had more experience and thus would provide them with a higher survivability. In the end, Sister Nuan and Chen Xiaoming chose Manly. They closed the door after they entered the room, leaving Xie alone in the corridor. The chill winds blew. He hugged himself as goosebumps rose on his arms. He jogged to Jiang Cheng's bedroom and knocked rapidly on the door. "It's me. Open up." As Jiang Cheng slowly examined the room, he said, "Didn't you want to push me alone into the toilet? You can take the room next door." Xie looked at the room next door. The door appeared to move in the wind like something was about to jump out. It was the girl's bedroom. Xie was so scared. He almost cried. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Please forgive me." Jiang Cheng sat down after he looked over the room. He twisted off the cap of a water bottle and took a light sip. He asked in a teasing tone, "What did you call me again?" "Boss Hao. Boss Hao." Jiang Cheng nodded with pleasure. "Boss Hao. Boss Hao." "Fatty." Jiang Cheng sighed in satisfaction. He waved his hand to signal Fatty to open the door. As the door opened, Xie rushed into the room like the wind. Then, he slammed the door closed. Xie didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. He curled in the corner silently, afraid that Jiang Cheng would throw him out. "You." Jiang Cheng raised his chin at Xie. "Take the bed." "Me?" Xie said in disbelief. This was a single bedroom, so the bed was a single bed. In other words, only one of the three of them could sleep in the bed. The other two had to sleep on the ground or share the couch. He didn't think he'd get the bed. Last night, he wasn't offered the bed in the master bedroom either. "Do you not want it?" No. Xie was shocked. "Thank you, boss." "Brother, then where do I sleep?" Fatty asked Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng was irked that Fatty didn't call him boss, but he still replied, "You'll take the couch, and I'll sleep on the ground." Fatty stood beside the bed and stared at Xie, who was lying in bed, his eyes filled with resentment. Then, he turned around to tell Jiang Cheng, "I think I can sleep in the bed." Jiang Cheng spread the mattress on the ground and wiggled into position. "No, you cannot." Jiang Cheng and Fatty had to stay up to keep watch. Neither of them trusted the one in the bed. Jiang Cheng snatched the watch from Xie since he wouldn't need it. He made a deal with Fatty that Fatty would stay up for the first 3 hours, and he would keep vigil for the later 3. "Then, what do you need me to do?" Xiaoyu wrapped himself in the blanket and poked his head out to ask, "I need you to sleep." Xiaoyu shrunk back. Even his head was gone. He turned into a cocoon. Even though the bungalow had electricity, the supply was not stable. The lights above them flickered and would make this static sound. This was perfect for a horror movie. Jiang Cheng had no choice but to turn the lights off. They could see a general situation of the room using the moonlight that filtered through the window. Fatty lay on the couch. He was fine during the first hour, but his eyelids started to fall. Even though he knew it was dangerous, he couldn't control them. In the end, his head tilted to the side, and he slumbered. It was a heavy sleep, but it shouldn't be long. At least when he woke up, the room was still dark. He rubbed his eyes and felt afraid. Someone slept beside the bed. It was Jiang Cheng. He was still a cocoon on the bed. Everything looked normal. Even though Fatty was tired, he didn't dare to go back to sleep. To make matters worse, he suddenly wanted to use the toilet. The bedroom had an attached toilet, and it was 5 meters away from Fatty. It was very small, and it was cornered off with half-transparent glass. However, ever since the middle-aged man died in the toilet, Fatty had a mental and physical resistance to using the toilet. He didn't even want to go near it. He suddenly remembered Jiang Cheng's solution: water bottles. However, he soon sunk into a new pool of despair. Jiang Cheng tossed all the bottles into the trash can before he went to bed, and the trash can. Fatty took a big gulp. The trash can stood quietly before the toilet door. Fatty had no choice but to slowly move towards the toilet. Every step was dangerous. He finally got close enough to the trash can. He immediately took the empty bottle out. However, before he could cheer for something, he saw something from the corner of his eye. He turned his head around and saw an arm reach out from the glass toilet door. In the main bedroom, Manly suddenly sat up from the couch. Then, he ran to the door and put his ear on it. "What's wrong?" Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming sat up in bed. To prevent any accidents, they didn't remove their clothes before getting into bed. They didn't dare to sleep too soundly too. Manly hushed them. Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming instantly shut up. The air seemed to freeze. About a minute later, they heard a soft creaking sound. A door had opened. Several seconds later, slow footsteps came from the corridor. Every step sounded like it landed in the water. Accompanying it was a strange friction sound. It sounded like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. The footsteps walked in a direction before disappearing. Manly and the two women's faces paled. The footsteps disappeared down the corridor. The end of the corridor was a locked room and nothing else. Something must have happened. Who was the victim this time? Was it the chef Fatty, the cowardly Xiaoyu, or the strange Hao Shui? In the other bedroom, inside the narrow toilet, Fatty widened his eyes, and his body couldn't stop shaking. He couldn't make any sound because a hand had been clamped over his mouth. Jiang Cheng knelt beside Fatty. They were very close. It was Jiang Cheng's hand that detained Fatty. Both of them stared outside the toilet door. The bedroom door was left open. Moonlight showered through the window. The bed was empty. Once he remembered the scene he saw, Fatty couldn't stop shaking. The figure laying on the floor beside the bed slowly stood up. The animation was awkward, and the figure was abnormally bloated. This was clearly not Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng was inside the toilet. He was the one who dragged Fatty into the toilet and covered his mouth. The two knelt on the ground. They didn't dare to make any sound as they looked through the semi-transparent glass. The large human shadow crawled under the blanket through the exposed corner. It was unknown what had happened to Xiaoyu. Despite the human shadow's extreme movement, Xiaoyu didn't respond or react in any way. The bed rocked silently, and the room suddenly became quiet. Jiang Cheng and Fatty didn't move. Eventually, the shadow crawled back out from the blanket. Then, it took gradual steps towards the bedroom door. The sound of water was exceptionally loud in the silent night. Through the thin moonlight, Jiang Cheng saw the shadow dragging the blanket, and inside the blanket, he turned to look at the bed. It was empty. Fatty was so scared. His large body trembled so much that Jiang Cheng almost lost control of him. Jiang Cheng had no choice but to pinch him. Fatty's face reddened, but at least he stopped shaking. After the sound of water and dragging disappeared outside the door, Jiang Cheng and Fatty still didn't move. They stayed in that pose until they heard the bedroom door open again. The first to enter was Manly. Behind him was Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming. They stuck close to the wall and carefully entered the room. Jiang Cheng finally let go of Fatty. The two exited the toilet. Fatty's lips were still trembling, so it was up to Jiang Cheng to relay what had happened. He was sleeping when he was woken up by this chill. In his sleepy fog, he discovered a dark shadow underneath the bed Xiaoyu was sleeping on. The shadow was on all fours with its joints twisted abnormally. It was slowly crawling out from under the bed. Jiang Cheng didn't make any sound as he quickly stood up to hide in the toilet. Therefore, the person Fatty saw sleeping on the ground beside the bed was not Jiang Cheng but the shadow that had just crawled out. After the real Jiang Cheng hid in the toilet, while Fatty was distracted, he dragged the man in. Chen Xiaoming switched on the lights in the room. After the lights came on, everyone saw the mess on the bed and the puddle of water on the ground. The water spread from the bed to the bedroom door. The group walked to the door and realized there were water puddles in the corridor as well. The water continued until it ended before the locked door. Was carried away by the ghost while inside the blanket. The thought was horrifying. No one had any hope that he was still alive. Manly tried to suppress the chill in his heart as he turned to Jiang Cheng. "Did you manage to see the ghost's appearance?" Fatty shook his head. He said the room was too dark, and he was. Everyone knew that he was scared. After all, he was a newbie. It was understandable. Just as Sister Nguyen was about to say something, Jiang Cheng suddenly said, "It's that girl." "What?" "The girl from the family of 4. Manly was shocked. "How can you tell?" After they reached the bungalow, they had not seen any pictures, so they should have no idea what the family looked like. Jiang Cheng lifted his head and looked at the locked door at the end of the corridor. The ghost was wearing a pair of female casual shoes. "I've seen them in the shoe closet before," Chen Xiaoming said with a pale face. "It looks like our hypothesis was right. The other family members tortured the girl and then killed her. Now, she is back for revenge. We have nothing to do with her death. Why did she target?" Fatty thought back to what had happened earlier and was still scared. Sister Nguyen scoffed. "Are you going to reason with a ghost?" "Enough." Manly cut in. "Stop talking. I'm going to go there to take a look." "Who's coming with me?" He was talking about the locked room at the end of the corridor. The ghost disappeared before that door with Xiaoyu. This was a very important clue. In the end, everyone decided to go together. It would be more dangerous if they split up. Plus, based on what Manly and Sister Nguyen said, the ghosts rarely killed consecutively. Different from before, Manly only pushed the door lightly, and it opened. The lock had been unlocked. Behind the door was a small room. Since there was no window, they could only see a bit of the room through the light in the corridor. The room was about the boy's bedroom. It was dark, and no one entered it. Jiang Cheng walked forward and searched the wall near the wall. Following a click, the lights in the room came on. Even though they were prepared, when they saw the room, they still sucked in a cold breath. There was a rolled-up blanket in the middle of the room. A pair of feet dangled out weakly. Several seconds later, Sister Nguyen walked forward to slowly unroll the blanket. "Ah!" Chen Xiaoming covered her mouth. Xiaoyu was snuggled inside the blanket. His eyes bulged out, and his pupils widened. The muscles on his face spasmed. It was clear that he was dead. His hands froze in the shape of claws, guarding his chest. The veins on the back of his hands popped. Jiang Cheng walked forward to pull up a corner of Xiaoyu's shirt. His body was covered in wounds. They looked like whip wounds. There were a few spots of blunt force traumas as well. His two hands were locked with handcuffs. Sister Nguyen found a backpack nearby. The backpack had a vibe, a dagger, handcuffs, ropes, and candles of varying sizes. After comparison, the rope inside the backpack was similar to the rope found in the garage. Fatty stared at the bloody tools, and his voice trembled. Was Xiaoyu tortured to death? No. Jiang Cheng stood up. The wounds on his body are too uniform. This means this was no struggle. In other words, he was already unconscious when he was tortured. I believe he was scared to death and then dragged here to be tortured. Corpse mutilation? Jiang Cheng nodded. I believe so. Brother, can you not be so calm? Fatty almost cried. If I weren't with you, based on your reaction, I would have suspected you were behind this. Jiang Cheng said righteously, nonsense. Even though my workplace also provides this kind of service, it is built on the basis of mutual agreement. Plus, we wouldn't go so far. Seeing the topic was about to be led astray, Manly quickly jumped out to remind them to look for clues. However, Jiang Cheng pointed at the shoes Xiaoyu was wearing. This is not right. He wasn't wearing these shoes earlier. Everyone's gaze moved to the shoes. It was a pair of sports shoes. It was very common. It didn't match Xiaoyu's appearance. Plus, the shoes looked too big for him. Manly grabbed the knife Sister Nguyen found in the backpack. He knelt on the ground and used the knife to cut through the shoelaces. He removed the shoes. Then, something shocking happened. There was another pair of shoes inside the sports shoes. This was a pair of compressed leather shoes. His feet were bent out of shape. It felt like his feet had been broken before the ghost put the sports shoes on him. Clearly, the leather shoes were Xiaoyu's own shoes. Is this the shoes of the boy? Chen Xiaoming looked at the shoes and said, but the pair of sports shoes we found in the first floor living room. Jiang Cheng knew the thing that troubled her. Even though the two pairs of sports shoes looked similar, the sizes were so different. They didn't seem to belong to the same person. Is the shoe closet used to store the shoes the boy has had over the years? This pair is the one he wore when he was older. Jiang Cheng thought about it and said, it's possible, but I don't think the chance of that is high. We've searched the whole bungalow. Did any of you find other shoes with this size? Everyone was silent. Then, Sister Nguyen asked carefully, so you mean there are 3 males in this bungalow, the father and his 2 sons? Man Li's face dropped as if he had thought of something. He picked up the sports shoes and ran out. He rushed down the stairs. Everyone followed. Fatty and Jiang Cheng stayed at the back of the room. When they passed the boy's bedroom, Fatty was dragged into it by Jiang Cheng. What are you doing? Fatty covered his body in fear. I want to inspect something. Why did you bring me with you then? Jiang Cheng opened all the drawers in the room. Then, he knelt down beside the bed and pulled out a pair of slippers from under the bed. He looked up at Fatty and said, because I'll be scared if I'm alone. Fatty. After that, Jiang Cheng and Fatty returned to the living room. The group was gathered around the shoe closet. All the shoes had been taken out and arranged neatly on the floor. Hearing their footsteps down the stairs, Manly put down the pair of female casual shoes he was holding. Fatty noticed that everyone didn't look that great. Just as Chen Xiaoming was about to say something, Jiang Cheng cut in. Did you figure out there are not only 2 boys, but also 2 girls in this bungalow? Man Li's pupils trembled. He was about to say something, but he held himself. After some time, he asked darkly, Newbie, who are you? Don't waste time on these things. Tell us what you have found. Jiang Cheng put down the things and looked at him calmly. Manly showed Jiang Cheng the 2 pairs of shoes. They were both female casual shoes. They were the same sizes, which was why they believed that both shoes belonged to the same woman. Manly turned the shoes over. This pair on the left has severe wear on the outer left, while this pair on the right has its wear focused in the middle. He looked up and into Jiang Cheng's eyes. Shoe wear is related to one's gait, and this habit can't be corrected overnight. Therefore, these have to belong to 2 girls. There were 2 girls here, but why is there only 1 girl's bedroom on the 2nd floor? Chen Xiaoming asked, and that bedroom only has a single bed. Jiang Cheng shook his head. The smaller bedrooms were both girls' bedrooms, so naturally they each have one bed. What do you mean? I found this in the bedroom with all the military posters. Jiang Cheng took out the slippers he found under the bed. The size is rather small. You can compare it to the casual shoes. Manly accepted the slippers and placed them beside the casual shoes. Everyone could see clearly that these two pairs belonged to the same person. But isn't it a stretch to say that room belongs to a girl based on a pair of slippers? Perhaps the girl accidentally left her slippers there. Plus, based on the room decoration, it should be a boy who lived there. But a boy wouldn't use these. Jiang Cheng took out a bag from his pocket and handed it to Chen Xiaoming. The girl lifted her brow once she saw the content. It was a pack of women's sanitary pad. I found that in the bedroom drawer. There's more than one, Jiang Cheng explained. Sister Nguyen looked at Jiang Cheng. So both of the bedrooms upstairs belonged to girls, and one of them was more tomboyish? Jiang Cheng nodded. Chen Xiaoming's eyes were unfocused. Then, where did the two boys stay? We only found 3 bedrooms in this bungalow, main bedroom and the 2 smaller bedrooms. Could it be on the 3rd floor? Fatty whispered, we haven't been there. Sister Nguyen shook her head. That shouldn't be. I looked around when we arrived. This bungalow only has windows on the 1st and 2nd floors. It should be an attic on the 3rd floor. Normally, no one would design a bedroom in a windowless room, especially considering how rich the owner of this bungalow was. Chen Xiaoming seemed to realize something, and she said nervously, so those 2 boys were not part of this family. They were visitors. Manly glanced at her and corrected her, more like intruders. Jiang Cheng also added, and they were not boys but 2 adult men. Chen Xiaoming shivered. Indeed, after the hypothesis was overruled, based on the 2 pairs of sports shoes that were left behind, one of them was closer in size to Jiang Cheng, and the other was bigger than Manly. Jiang Cheng looked at the 2 pairs of sports shoes on the ground. When I first saw them, I was confused. They were so cheap and old. They were clearly different from the other shoes in the shoe closet. The people living here didn't seem like people who'd buy cheap shoes. Silence reigned in the living room. The story turned from a family tragedy to a home invasion. Then, Fatty looked left and right and announced softly, so, 2 guys trespassed into this bungalow, killed the father and mother, imprisoned their 2 daughters and then killed them? Do you remember the water trail left behind by the ghost? There's also a lot of long hair in the 1st floor bathroom. Sister Nguyen said, that means the ghost probably died from drowning. He was frightened to death and then tortured. This would explain why the ghost would put the sports shoes on him. The ghost treated Xiaoyu as one of the men who tortured and killed her. After they finished their analysis, it was already dawn. No one urged Fatty to cook. They ate some simple food, like bread. It was not that they felt sorry for Fatty, but they didn't have much time left. Jiang Cheng noticed that days were getting shorter in this world. Based on his calculations, after 2 more nights, the sun would never rise in this world again. What would happen after the day fully disappears? Fatty asked with his widened eyes. Jiang Cheng turned around and patted Fatty in consolation. Don't worry. Fatty's pale face reddened slightly. Jiang Cheng finished. At most, the ghosts will start killing indiscriminately. Fatty. The group walked down the 2nd floor corridor. They wanted to do a second search of the bungalow while there was still daylight. With the elementary analysis out of the way, their search was more targeted. Fatty stuck close to Jiang Cheng. Manly grumbled that his big size was blocking people's view and scolded him several times. Fatty ignored him and the others couldn't do much to him. Soon, they found something in the main bedroom. There was a solid wood picture frame hanging on the wall. There was an old picture in the frame. The picture had been soaked, and the background had yellowed. Only the family of 4 in the center of the picture could be seen. The male and female owners stood in the middle. The mother had her hands on the shoulders of a girl with 2 pigtails. The girl stood obediently before her mother. The other, taller girl looked more rebellious. Her pants and sleeves were rolled up. Her thin arms were covered with tattoos. She stood beside the father and lifted her chin in defiance. It looked like this was the family that once lived here. The strange thing was all of their faces were blurred out, and so was the background. It was impossible to tell where the picture was taken. Chen Xiaoming was stunned when she saw the picture, and then she said excitedly, "I remember this picture wasn't there in the morning. This whole wall was unadorned in the morning." Sister Nuan was calmer. She was used to strange things happening in the dream realm. "We probably found the right clues and triggered the progression of the plot," Manli explained. Jiang Cheng looked at him, "Kinda like a game?" "I suppose so." Then, they found a pair of pliers in the room where Xieyu's body was found. Beside the pliers was a squashed round tin box. It was the kind used to store candies. Fatty picked up the box and shook it. It made a rattling sound. "What is it?" Just as he wanted to use his large hands to twist the box open, Jiang Cheng held him back. Jiang Cheng grabbed him and stared at the pliers. His expression shifted. "What's wrong?" Fatty was scared. Jiang Cheng's expression slowly returned to normal and said, "Nothing. I suddenly remembered there might be more clues in the bedrooms, so I'll go there for now." "Oh. Okay." Fatty nodded. He wanted to go with Jiang Cheng, but he was too curious about the contents of the box. 3 seconds after Jiang Cheng left, Fatty finally opened the box. His eyes turned from curiosity to confusion and finally fear. When Jiang Cheng returned with his hands over his ears, Fatty had stopped making any sound. Manly covered Fatty's mouth and tossed the shivering man to the side with annoyance. Jiang Cheng poked his head over and saw the box lying on the ground. A few milky white buttons were scattered around the box. "I knew there would be teeth." Jiang Cheng nodded with satisfaction. Manli and Sister Nuan apparently had the same guesses because they didn't show much shock. However, Chen Xiaoming's face paled. Even her teeth chattered. "Men are all pigs," Sister Nuan said coolly, "bunch of animals." Jiang Cheng heard that and looked at Manli. Manli was startled and then groused, "Why are you looking at me for?" Jiang Cheng shrugged and turned to the fatty at the corner. He met the latter's accusing gaze. Jiang Cheng scratched his head and turned away in embarrassment. There were no more clues. Jiang Cheng suggested they check behind the door on the 3rd floor. Manli stopped him and pointed out the window. It was almost dark. Exploring a new area in the dark was not a good idea. Therefore, everyone decided to stop the search and went to rest. Fatty thought that everyone would sleep together, considering the incident that happened the night before. However, Sister Nuan had no such idea. She even kicked Manli out and slammed the door. Manli stood before the main bedroom door with his blanket and pillow like an abandoned husband. "It's all right, brother." Fatty consoled him, "You can sleep with us." "That won't be necessary. I'll sleep downstairs." Then, Manli carried his stuff and went downstairs. His footsteps echoed along the steps. Jiang Cheng turned back to the bedroom. Fatty thought about it and followed Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng switched on all the lights and then leaned on the door to listen to the movements outside. After a while, Jiang Cheng slowly moved away from the door and sat down on the couch. "Brother, are we still sleeping here tonight?" Fatty's face was green as his eyes kept moving to the bed. "The ghost came from under that bed yesterday night." "Of course not. I'm going to the study later," Jiang Cheng admitted. "I'm coming with you." About 10 minutes later, the sky was fully dark. Jiang Cheng glanced at his wristwatch, stood up and sidled to the door to open it. Then, he slipped to the other room, slowly eased the door open and fluttered into it. Fatty followed him. After they closed the door, they found chairs to sit on. Fatty wanted to open the lights, but was stopped by Jiang Cheng. Fatty looked at the scary darkness around them and couldn't help but say, "Can't you let me switch on the lights or else I'll feel like ghosts are everywhere." Jiang Cheng sighed and compromised. "Fine." Fatty moved around and finally found the switch on the wall. As he was about to press it, Jiang Cheng's voice floated from behind him. "This way, the ghosts will definitely be able to find you." On the bed in the main bedroom, Chen Xiaoming hugged a pillow and sobbed quietly. The ghosts in this mission were scarier than the ones in her last mission. Once she thought of the pliers and the teeth in the box, her body trembled. Sister Nguyen sat on the couch. Her normal arrogance was gone. Chen Xiaoming reminded her of her former self. "All right, stop crying," she said gently. "You should be able to tell that the ghosts here only target men. We'll be safe after chasing Manly away." Chen Xiaoming raised her head to reveal her red eyes. "Doesn't this mean the three are in danger?" "Don't be silly. Our main concern is ourselves." Sister Nguyen glanced at the door and her face darkened. Then, she turned around to say after a pause, "Remember, in the dream realm, the thing that is often the most dangerous is not ghosts, but other humans." "Humans?" Chen Xiaoming widened her eyes. "That's right." Sister Nguyen subconsciously closed her hands around her collar and said darkly, "They're scarier than ghosts." The fire in the fireplace crackled. The fire lit up the whole living room. Manly, who was seated before the fireplace, had his face darkened. He knew why Sister Nguyen had kicked him out. The two ghosts in the bungalow were murdered by two men, so their targets were male. The middle-aged man and were the perfect examples. With that in mind, Manly grabbed 2 new firewood and tossed them into the fireplace. The fire burned harder. So far, the tragedy had been cleared up. In other words, the mission would end soon. However, that meant the ghosts would become more aggressive. Something would happen that night. The question was who would die. It was because of that he rejected Fatty's idea of sleeping together. The chance of him being attacked if he was alone was, if he stayed with the other two, the chance would be 100%, and being targeted by ghosts' fear crossed his eyes. Ghosts rarely killed more than one person at one time, but it didn't mean that it wouldn't happen. Plus, he had his own plan. He had confidence he could survive until morning if he stayed beside the fireplace. Based on current evidence, the ghost died from drowning, and there was a burning flame before him. In the study, Fatty knelt in the dark and didn't dare to breathe. Eventually, he poked his neck closer to where Jiang Cheng was sitting, and he whispered, "Do you think the ghost will know that we're hiding here?" "Don't know." Fatty sighed in relief. "That's good." "I meant I don't know," Jiang Cheng clarified. After spending some time with Jiang Cheng, Fatty was used to being scared. He shivered for less than 5 seconds and could converse normally again. "To be serious, brother," Fatty stared at Jiang Cheng. "I know you're not a normal person. Last night, when the ghost appeared, I was so scared. I didn't know anything, but you still remembered what she wore. You're not a model. You were with the police, right?" Hope appeared on Fatty's face. However, Jiang Cheng glanced at him. "Do you think we'll survive if I'm with the police or show the ghost my badge?" Fatty's hope was drenched again. He said helplessly, "So, we're done for." Jiang Cheng was about to answer when Fatty raised his hand to stop him. "I'm going to guess you'll say I'm the only one who's done for, right?" Jiang Cheng shrugged. "But," he later added, "but there's no need to be so pessimistic. There is still a chance to turn this around." Just as Fatty raised his head to say something, Jiang Cheng hushed him. Fatty immediately shut up. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed, but Fatty still heard nothing. Nothing changed in the study. He was extremely nervous and perked up his ears. Jiang Cheng stood up from his chair and glanced at the study table. Fatty heard him mumble about the lack of action. "Brother," Fatty was so shocked that his voice changed, "are you waiting for the ghost?" "Shush." Jiang Cheng frowned as he headed to the door. "Wait here. I'll go out to take a look." Fatty quickly ran after him. "No, we need to stick together." Jiang Cheng and Fatty came to the corridor. The lights were still on, but they were very dim. Jiang Cheng didn't hesitate and went directly to the main bedroom. He knocked on it lightly. Several seconds later, an alerted female voice said, "Who is it?" "It's me." Jiang Cheng answered, "How shui? What are you doing here?" Jiang Cheng said seriously, "I think something has happened to Manly." Hearing this, the door opened up more, but it was only a gap. Sister Nguyen only showed one eye. "How can you tell?" Jiang Cheng looked down the corridor where the stairs were and then added, "It's not safe here. Can we talk inside?" Sister Nguyen looked at Jiang Cheng and Fatty for a while before nodding, "Okay." The door opened. Sister Nguyen stood behind it. They didn't switch on the light either. Once he heard that something might have happened to Manly, Fatty became so nervous. He had no idea how Jiang Cheng came to that conclusion, but he chose to believe him. Jiang Cheng was the first to enter, and Fatty followed him. However, as he was about to enter the room, Jiang Cheng halted. He paused, and that caused Fatty to bump into him. Before Fatty could say anything, Jiang Cheng retreated to the corridor. At the same time, he pulled Fatty away with him. Sister Nguyen had already opened the door for him. "Get in. Why are you wasting time?" She kept glancing down the corridor like something scary would appear there. "I forgot something important in my room," Jiang Cheng suddenly said. "I'll be back after I get it." Before Sister Nguyen could react, Jiang Cheng grabbed Fatty and turned around. They rushed down the corridor. Fatty didn't think Jiang Cheng would be so strong despite his slender frame. He was practically dragged away by Jiang Cheng. His mind was blank. However, he was clever enough not to say anything. They came to the corner of the stairwell and the corner. Jiang Cheng pulled him into hiding. "What did you find out?" Fatty asked between breaths. He saw cold sweat drip down Jiang Cheng's face. Jiang Cheng told him to be quiet as he leaned close to the corridor as if to listen. Several minutes later, his face returned to normal. "Something's wrong with Sister Nguyen," Jiang Cheng whispered. Fatty's face trembled. "What do you mean?" She was wearing a pair of slippers. "Slippers?" "Yes." Jiang Cheng nodded. "I saw them when I entered the door earlier." He continued, "We all know how dangerous this bungalow is. We could be chased at any time. Why would she remove her normal shoes and change into a pair of slippery slippers? This is not a holiday." Fatty thought of something, and he shook. "So you mean the Sister Nguyen we saw is a ghost?" "I'm afraid so." Jiang Cheng nodded. "If that's the case, the girl, Chen Xiaoming." "All right." Jiang Cheng interrupted him. "Let's go to the living room." To avoid unnecessary misunderstanding, Jiang Cheng didn't hide his footsteps going down the stairs. However, when he and Fatty arrived, there was only the burning fireplace. Manly was gone. Fatty was scared. "Do you think something happened to him?" Jiang Cheng looked around and said, "Come out. We're humans, not ghosts." Then, a giant shadow stood up behind the couch. Manly looked at them with alert. The knife in his hand glowed dangerously. "Why did you come down?" He glanced at the stairs and then at Jiang Cheng. "What about the other two?" "Something happened to them." Manly stared at them suspiciously. Based on their predictions, women should be safe in this mission. Fatty quickly explained everything to him. Manly's expression changed, and he sighed. In that case, something bad probably happened to them. Fatty wanted to say it was worse than that. They should hope they didn't find them like Xiaoyu. Since ghosts had already attacked that night, it was comparatively safer for the rest. However, after what happened, even Fatty didn't feel sleepy anymore. "You should rest," Jiang Cheng said. "I won't sleep. I'll wake you 2 hours later." Perhaps Manly was already used to this. He lay down not on the couch, but beside the fireplace. No one knew if he was really sleeping or not. Furthermore, he kept the knife he found in the kitchen close to him. Beside the warm fire, even Fatty started to feel drowsy. He hadn't had a good sleep in a while. Only his determination kept him going. He sat on the couch, and the scene before him blurred. When he opened his eyes again, the sky was brightening. Manly and Jiang Cheng were quietly discussing something. Jiang Cheng looked normal, but Manly looked quite excited. Fatty moved, and the couch creaked. Jiang Cheng turned to look at him. "You're up." Fatty rubbed his face with some embarrassment. "The sun's up." "Should we go up to check?" "There's no need to hurry. We should wait until the sun is fully up first." Just like that, they waited for another half an hour. During this period, the trio ate some simple stuff like bread to stave off hunger. Then, Jiang Cheng announced that it was almost time. They took their things and headed upstairs. Manly was still holding the knife he had yesterday. Jiang Cheng grabbed a rolling pin. Since there was nothing else left in the kitchen, he held the chopping board before him like a shield. The three slowly approached the main bedroom. By then, they had confirmed that something had happened to Sister Nguyen and the girl. The door of the main bedroom was left half open. It was very quiet. Jiang Cheng reached out to push the door fully open. Fatty raised the chopping board. They were ready to see two dead bodies or ghosts jumping out at them. But once the door opened, there was nothing inside. There were no bodies or blood. There were not even any signs of struggle. The bed was neatly made. Everything was arranged neatly. There was a silk robe left on the couch like the female owner had just left. "Where are the people?" Fatty asked with wide eyes. Jiang Cheng looked under the bed while Manly checked the closet. Then, they examined the bathroom. Behind the couch, they then searched the other rooms, including the one where Xie Yu's corpse was found. Nothing. Chen Xiaoming and Sister Nguyen disappeared. Jiang Cheng thought about it and suddenly asked Manly, "Is there a possibility that they haven't died but have left this place?" "Do you mean they have completed the mission?" Manly's face darkened, but he still answered, "It's improbable but not impossible." Fatty cut in, "But how does that explain the ghost we encountered last night?" Jiang Cheng knew what Fatty wanted to say. Since the ghost took Sister Nguyen's appearance and appeared in Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming's bedroom, it had to mean that the two had been attacked. Before they met the ghost, Jiang Cheng stayed on the second floor. He didn't hear anyone move in the corridor, so Sister Nguyen and the girl didn't leave their room. The windows in the bungalow were locked, so there was no chance of them escaping that way. Either the two had been killed by the ghosts, and their bodies had been hidden away, or the two had already left the dream realm and completed the mission before the ghost arrived. With regards to how to leave the mission, Manitoba Lee shared his experience. Normally, after all the clues had been found, a black iron door would appear. They would return to the real world through that door. However, he stressed that while the door could appear at any location, it wouldn't be at a secluded spot. It would be at a location crucial to the mission. "Just like the door we pushed open in our dreams?" Jiang Cheng asked. Manly nodded. "Yes, you can see it as the path that connects the real world and the dream realm." They returned to the first floor living. Jiang Cheng sat on the thick carpet. Manly and Fatty sat down opposite Jiang Cheng. The situation was a bit complicated. "Okay." Jiang Cheng raised his head to say, "We'll assume Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming have already escaped this place successfully. We'll need to figure out how they did that." Fatty stuttered and asked, "But how come I feel like they've been killed?" Jiang Cheng looked at him and said evenly, "That's meaningless. If you insist that they've been killed, then all we can do is to wait for death." Fatty was scared by Jiang Cheng's attitude and stopped talking. Manly quickly nodded. "You're right. They must have found the way to leave. So it's now our turn." Jiang Cheng patted his pants and stood up. He glanced out the window. The sunlight was blinding, but he knew that based on the previous calculation, the morning would only stay for 3 hours, and half of the 3 hours had already passed. When the night descended again, their world would forever be dropped into the eternal night. "We don't have enough time. We have to split up." Jiang Cheng looked around. "Manly, you can go alone. Fatty will come with me. We need to move fast and pay attention to things like keys. There might be clues behind that iron door on the 3rd floor. However, I've tried everything. Without the key, we aren't opening that door." "Okay." The two teams went to work. Since Jiang Cheng's group had one more person, they would handle the larger first floor. Manly searched the second floor. Soon, the search bore results. Jiang Cheng found a piece of rope at an inconspicuous corner behind the staircase. One end of the rope was tied to the corner of the second floor staircase. The other end extended to the first floor. Jiang Cheng ran up the stairs to examine the knot. The place was where he and Fatty were hiding yesterday. There was no rope there yesterday. When Manly heard them running up the stairs, he also walked out of the study. "What's wrong?" Jiang Cheng pointed at the rope. Then, they returned back to the first floor and followed the rope. They walked to the end of the living room, and the small room where the wood was stored had its door open. Manly's face dropped. "I remember tying a rope between the door handle and the nail beside the door." "Where's the rope?" Fatty walked into the room and picked up a rope from behind a stack of wood. The rope was snipped into two parts, and the cut was clean. Manly took over and touched it. It was cut by a tool like a dagger. There was another door inside the small room. The wood before the door had been moved away. Jiang Cheng walked over and gave it a push. The door didn't budge. He looked through the glass on the door. It led to the back of the bungalow. There were some fallen leaves on the ground. However, due to the earlier rain, the ground was muddy. There were clear tire tracks in the mud. "It is left behind by the bus," Fatty gasped. However, they were surrounded by woods. There was no path for a bus. Regardless, that was not important. The important thing was they knew how Sister Nguyen and the girl left. Fatty learned from Jiang Cheng and shook the door heavily. The door didn't want to open. "Stop doing that," Jiang Cheng said. "You won't be able to open it." Fatty stopped, but he asked, "If this door won't open, how do they leave?" Manly suddenly answered, "It's the time." "Time?" "Yes." Manly looked at the confused Fatty and nodded. "We have the wrong timing. The bus and the door will only work when the time is right." 3.7 am, Jiang Cheng said. Manly looked at him in surprise and nodded. "You've thought of it too." "What are you talking about?" Fatty blinked. "Why 3.7 am? Do you remember Sieyu's time of death?" Jiang Cheng said, "Back then, I looked at the clock. It showed 3.7 am. Fatty was shocked. "But isn't time unreliable in this world?" Manly continued, "Correct, but that doesn't mean we cannot use it as a frame of reference. On the night Sieyu died, I heard a strange sound, and I also looked at the time." He took the pocket watch from his pocket and shook it before Fatty. It also showed 3.7 am then. However, not too long ago, I just glanced at the time. It showed 6 am. In other words, all the clocks in the room would show 3.7 am at a specific moment. Fatty's pupils trembled. He whipped his head at Jiang Cheng. "So yesterday, you were waiting for the time to reach 3.7 am in the study because the ghost would show up then?" Jiang Cheng showed no response, but Fatty continued, "The ghost didn't show up, so you went to probe Sister Nguyen. When you saw that Sister Nguyen was still alive, you said Manly was." He suddenly stopped because Manly was still standing there. The rest was simple. They returned to the living room. Jiang Cheng sat on the couch. Manly stayed beside the fireplace. Fatty went to cook. After food, they gathered around. Manly said he saw 6 tire threads behind the bungalow. In other words, the bus had been there for the past 3 nights. They had spent 3 nights at the bungalow already. The sky was fully dark. Manly glanced at the watch. Soon, just as Fatty was about to fall asleep, Jiang Cheng suddenly announced, "It's time." Manly stood up and put the pocket watch in his pocket. Everyone walked to the storage at the corner of the living room. Jiang Cheng and Manly were very careful. After all, no one could confirm no ghost would show up near the end. Just as they entered the storage, the empty space behind the bungalow lit up. A bus drove over from the distance and then paused about 20 meters away from the bungalow. Manly took a deep breath and then placed his hand on the door handle. He pushed. The door opened. Fatty was so excited, he almost cried. Manly was the first to leave. Then, Fatty. Finally, Jiang Cheng. The bungalow was very warm, so when they first came out, they were shocked by the cold. Manly pulled his coat around his body. Jiang Cheng did the same. Fatty could only hug himself. The three slowly moved towards the bus. It was the same people on the bus, the pair of couple, the pair of mother and son. They were all in their seats. Director Jiang stood on the bus and welcomed them with passion. Sorry for the wait, travelers. We're going home now. Home. It was so captivating. Fatty wanted to get on the bus, but someone pulled him from behind. In that opening, Manly walked past him and got on the bus. Fatty turned around and saw Jiang Cheng looking at the bus calmly. What's wrong? Jiang Cheng didn't answer. Travelers, do you not want to go home? Director Jiang smiled and bowed slightly. She exposed the pretty rose tattoo on her slender arm. If you're late, you won't be able to go home. Manly, who was on the bus, finally noticed Jiang Cheng and Fatty didn't follow him. He turned around and looked at them in confusion. However, Fatty was not in the mood to care about him because he realized Director Jiang was glaring at Jiang Cheng. Her eyes turned vicious. A few seconds passed, and since the driver didn't do anything, the bus door slammed closed. The speed was so fast that Fatty was shocked. The bus disappeared, and only 2 deep tire tracks were left. No, no. Fatty was scared by Director Jiang. His body couldn't stop shaking. After comparing this to the incident with Sister Nguyen, he gasped, that was a trap. Director Jiang was a ghost too. Jiang Cheng ignored Fatty. He saw the bus disappear and then whispered, goodbye. Jiang Cheng returned to the bungalow and came to the iron door on the 3rd floor. Fatty wanted to ask Jiang Cheng some questions, but he didn't have the opportunity. Jiang Cheng reached out, and the door opened. Jiang Cheng didn't open it. Instead, an arm from inside opened the lock. It's you. As the door opened, Fatty gasped. Chen Xiaoming still looked pretty innocent. She pulled the door open. Jiang Cheng entered the door. After some hesitations, Fatty followed. As Sister Nguyen said, it was a secret room on the 3rd floor. There was no window. The only light source was 2 white candles the size of a baby's arm. The candlelight showed that the room was large. It was even larger than the main bedroom. A pure black iron door was embedded in the wall. When he saw the iron door, Fatty's heart relaxed. The iron door gave him an indescribable strange feeling. It couldn't be fabricated. I'm curious, how did you know it was a trap? Chen Xiaoming sat on the chair and put her chin on her palm. Her other hand pointed behind the bungalow. She didn't look nervous. If anything, she looked excited. Of course, she was not talking to Fatty but Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng sat down across from her. Even though you decorated everything so truthfully by leaving the rope on the stairs and hiding them inside the storage to create the illusion that you've left through the back door, there were too many questions. For one, why would the ghost disguise itself as Sister Nguyen to appear in the room after you left? Also, your bedroom was neatly arranged and set up. I don't believe the ghosts have the reasons to do that. Chen Xiaoming smiled, but even so, you were still tricked by us to leave the bungalow. You merely didn't get on the bus at the last moment. Jiang Cheng shook his head. That's wrong. Oh? Chen Xiaoming smiled brightly until her eyes were crescents. How am I wrong? She only treated Jiang Cheng as a stubborn man. She hadn't encountered such an interesting person in a long time already. There are 3 points where you are wrong. 1. I wasn't tricked by you to leave the bungalow. I left it voluntarily. Jiang Cheng explained, there are tire tracks on the mud at the back of the bungalow but no footprints. Therefore, you haven't left the bungalow. 2. You are the only one trying to trick us. Sister Nguyen is already dead. He then took out something the size of a button from his pocket. By then, Chen Xiaoming's smile had already disappeared. It was a rectangular button made from tortoiseshell. It was quite rare. I found it in the main bedroom. It still had some broken thread stuck to it. Jiang Cheng said, if I remember correctly, it came from Sister Nguyen's coat. I believe Sister Nguyen was killed before I came to your room. This button flew out when Sister Nguyen struggled with the ghost. After the ghost left, you cleaned up the room. Your purpose was to prevent us from figuring out Sister Nguyen was killed and creating the illusion that you had escaped from the bungalow. Jiang Cheng shut up after that. Chen Xiaoming was silent for a while before asking him, then, what is the third point? The last point, which is also the most important. Jiang Cheng straightened up and looked at the girl. Even Fatty felt nervous. I want to know who gave a girl, who has no looks, no body, no brain, like you the courage to trick me, he asked directly. Fatty was stunned. He knew to expect the unexpected, but even so, he was shocked. Time appeared to pause. Chen Xiaoming's mouth fell open. She couldn't say a word. All right. Jiang Cheng leaned back in his chair and said, now, it's my turn to ask the questions. Go to hell. Chen Xiaoming grabbed the china vase next to her and tossed it over. Jiang Cheng avoided it easily. Her face was red. She looked like she would fight Jiang Cheng to death. Jiang Cheng said calmly, I'd advise you to calm down. This is a locked room, and we're the only two people here. If you don't follow my instructions, some bad things might happen. Chen Xiaoming chuckled mirthlessly. Are you threatening me? Fatty licked his lips. Brother, you two are not the only people here. I'm here too. Jiang Cheng glanced at Fatty and then added, right, there's also a Fatty here. Think about it. Chen Xiaoming's face paled. Then, she turned around to look at the door. Jiang Cheng's voice started again, don't even think about it. That door is 5 meters from you, and I'm only 3 meters from you. I can easily catch you. Chen Xiaoming laughed from anger. The door will open in less than 10 minutes. I don't think you can do anything to me. Jiang Cheng scratched his chin with interest. So there are 10 minutes later. As he stood up, he revealed a meaningful smile. We don't need that long. 30 seconds will be enough. Fatty's eyes widened. Chen Xiaoming's fists tightened. Eventually, she gritted her teeth and hissed, what questions do you have? Ask. Jiang Cheng smirked and sat back down. He looked a bit regretful. How did you open this door? Chen Xiaoming glared at him and huffed. After you left yesterday, the ghost that killed Sister Nguyen dragged her body here. I followed it here. In other words, Sister Nguyen's body was still in the bedroom when I was there yesterday. Yes, she was just behind the door. At that point, Chen Xiaoming paused to smile at Jiang Cheng. If you had taken a few more steps inwards, your body might have ended up here too. Jiang Cheng ignored her and continued asking, where is Sister Nguyen's body? Chen Xiaocheng stood up and headed to the door. Jiang Cheng immediately followed, keeping a meter away from her. I can't run. The door is not open yet. Chen Xiaoming scoffed. Jiang Cheng followed her and shook her head. Don't misunderstand me. I just feel much happier when I'm close to you. Chen Xiaoming pouted and ignored him. She walked to the wall and searched for a switch. Then, the room lit up. The light above them came on. At the same time, Fatty's eyes almost jumped out of their sockets. The room was designed like a church. A huge cross hung on the wall. Sister Nguyen was hanged on the cross upside down. It was clear that she was dead. The place was stuffed with various kinds of torture devices. They looked medieval and creepy. Most of them were stained with blood. This was a torture room. The cross represents God, and the inverse cross represents the devil. Jiang Cheng looked at the devices emotionlessly. It looks like this was a family of Satanists. Fatty was shocked by the scene. Chen Xiaoming looked at Jiang Cheng with interest. Sounds like you've already guessed that already. This kind of preparation couldn't be done in a short amount of time. Therefore, the owners of these torture devices could only be the bungalow owners and not the two poor intruders. When Fatty recovered, he looked at Jiang Cheng. In other words, the real killers are the family and two men. Jiang Cheng nodded. Haven't you already met them? Fatty seemed to realize something, and he stuttered. It was the bus that ferried us here. The driver, the mother with the kid, the tomboyish female operator, the girl and the couple, they are the family living here. That's right. Chen Xiaoming shrugged. The man and the couple and the big boy the mother was taking care of, they were the victims tormented by this family. Fatty thought back to the strange actions of the mother and son, as well as the couple did. For example, the man of the couple always had an eye mask on, and he remained motionless. The boy with his mother looked so scared even though he was with his mother. It was hell on earth. The ghost wasn't back for revenge. She was merely continuing her sins in life. These habits couldn't be changed no matter what. When did you know the truth? Jiang Cheng looked at Chen Xiaoming. After the ghost killed Sister Nguyen, the picture we found on the wall suddenly became clear. She took out a picture. The wooden frame was gone. She probably tossed it away already. Jiang Cheng accepted the picture. It was a portrait of the family. Jiang Cheng remembered every face in the picture. The background was this torture room. In the corner of the picture, there were two men. They were both chained. Since their heads were lowered, their faces couldn't be seen. However, they were dressed similarly to the two men on the bus. The door started to glow weakly, and the whole space trembled. The mission was ending. The door was opening. Why lie to us? How does that benefit you? Jiang Cheng steadied himself and asked one last question. Chen Xiaoming was already used to the door shaking when it was about to open. While Fatty was holding the wall to stop himself from falling, she was already standing before the iron door. The iron door fully opened, and it revealed a world of fog. Jiang Cheng turned to look at Fatty behind him before walking into the fog. After a temporary phase of vertigo, Jiang Cheng's body paused. He stepped on firm ground again. He looked down and saw the wooden floor. Everything became familiar. He took a deep breath. He had returned to his office. The sky outside the window was still dark. A bit of moonlight shone in. It was how he left it. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. It was made of rough material. Through the moonlight, it was revealed to be a folded piece of paper. He slowly opened it, but suddenly his body froze. A hand silently fell on his right shoulder. The person had been waiting for him. Jiang Cheng slowly raised his hands. There are 200,000 inside the hidden compartment in the third drawer of the office table. The drawer is locked. The key is inside the second to last cup in the kitchen. There was no sound. He paused and then continued, I only have so much money. If you want to rob me of something else, I suggest we go upstairs first. There's only a mattress, so I hope you don't mind. The hand that held his shoulder shook, and then a loud voice said, Brother, this is a nice place. Jiang Cheng turned around and grabbed the hand on his shoulder. At the same time, he twisted it behind the person's back and pinned the person's rotund body against the wall. Brother! Brother! Fatty hissed in pain. Jiang Cheng recognized the man and asked chilly, Why are you here? He glanced at the location where the door was. Only a normal wall remained. Based on what Manly said, if one survived the mission, the survivors would return to where they started in the real world or their own homes. But this was clearly not Fatty's home. Fatty's right shoulder almost snapped. He quickly explained, I was thinking about how good it'd be if I could stay with brother when I crossed the door. Then, I ended up here. Probably we are fated. Before Fatty could finish, Jiang Cheng cut him off. Stop joking. You just wanted me to bring me across the nightmare barrier. Going into the nightmare was not an isolated incident. Fatty knew that too. He only survived the mission because he stuck with Jiang Cheng. He might not be as lucky next time. Fatty looked awkward after he was exposed. Jiang Cheng searched his body and found nothing special. He let Fatty go and switched on the light above them. Fatty leaned against the wall. As he rubbed his arm, he studied Jiang Cheng's office. "Brother," Fatty saw the patient's records on the table and asked Jiang Cheng, "Are you a doctor?" "Yes." "In what field?" Jiang Cheng walked to the office table and sat down, the field of resentment. Fatty bubbled his saliva like he wanted to say something, but he still shut up in the end. Based on Jiang Cheng's requirement, he sat down across from him. The couch was old. The leather was cracked. The back could be pushed down easily to turn the couch into a bed. Sometimes, Jiang Cheng would direct his patients to lie there and help them relax. After some questions, Fatty revealed that his name was Wang Fugue. He had done many jobs, the most recent job being the driver of a long-distance transportation truck. Due to some reasons, he quit. His house was in the Swan City, not far away from the Banyan City. Fatty said it was his first time entering the nightmare world. Jiang Cheng asked why he was so neatly dressed and knew to carry an umbrella with him. That was not how a normal person would dress when they went to bed. Fatty scratched his head and admitted that he got into a big fight due to a recent salary issue with his boss. Then, he was chased out of the employee hostel. He had no money for a hotel stay, so he decided to sleep overnight in a small garden. But Jiang Cheng knew that Fatty wanted to say he also had no idea why he would suddenly appear at that place. "Did you cross through a door too?" "Yes." Fatty nodded as his face paled. "The door appeared on the wall of the garden, but I remembered there was not a door there." It was similar to Jiang Cheng's experience. Everyone came to the dream realm through a door that didn't exist, but the difference was the location of the doors. Jiang Cheng glanced at the time. It was dawn. He turned to Fatty and said officiously, "You can stay here until morning, but after that, you have to leave." Fatty looked at Jiang Cheng with puppy eyes. Jiang Cheng didn't change his mind. He ignored Fatty after that. He sat down and took out the folded piece of paper from his pocket. He spread it out on the table. Fatty stretched his neck to look. In the end, he ran over to the other side of the table to see clearly. It was an article from a newspaper. The paper was yellow. Most of it was blurry. Jiang Cheng turned it around and saw a clear printed line. "The case of the torture mansion has been solved. The family of devils fell into the lake and died." It contained details about the case. The family was a group of Satanists. The father pretended to be a tour bus driver and tricked many innocent passengers into his home in the forest. One of the daughters pretended to be a tour guide, while the other daughter fished for victims on the internet. The mother controlled the big picture. They trapped and tortured the victims at the bungalow. In just a month, the local police had received many reports of missing people. One of them was a pair of twins. Eventually, the police followed the trail of the missing people and found the hidden bungalow in the forest. However, the family managed to escape and carried with them 3 victims. Late at night, they drove the bus and escaped through a narrow, small path. Due to days of storm, part of the path had been washed away. The bus skidded off the road and fell into the river by the roadside. When they were found, the family of 4 and 3 victims had already drowned. This would appear to be the truth of the nightmare mission. However, there was more than that caught Jiang Cheng's attention. The article featured a picture of one of the victims. It should be released by the police. The picture mentioned that this victim couldn't be identified. The police hoped that anyone who had any clues would contact the police. From the picture, the victim was tall and muscular. The face had been blurred off. He wore a black collar. The picture also showed a few of his effects. Fatty's eyes moved down. He was startled when he saw a pocket watch. Then, he became agitated. "Doctor, this is..." Jiang Cheng didn't allow him to continue. "It does look like Manly." The newspaper was dated 1st June 2006. It happened 14 years ago. Manly died in the past. No wonder the police couldn't find anything about him. In other words, every Dream Realm mission is real? The door sends us to the past to experience certain people's experiences? Fatty gasped. Jiang Cheng thought about it. It's possible, but this is just one incident. We've just experienced one nightmare to form any conclusions. Plus, there's one thing that you got wrong. Jiang Cheng folded the paper and told Fatty, even if the door really did send us back into the past, the experience we had was the tragedy experienced by the victims or another nightmare. Fatty thought about it and agreed with Jiang Cheng. Since people called the place the Dream Realm, each mission would put the players in life-threatening danger. Sister Nguyen and Manly had cleared a few missions, but they still died. Doctor, Fatty's lips trembled. Do you remember the water puddles everywhere around the house? Jiang Cheng nodded. The family died from drowning, so even after they became ghosts, they retained water. Fatty nodded with a pale face. Then, his eyes stared at the paper in Jiang Cheng's hands. Seeing Jiang Cheng's alert face, Fatty quickly explained, Doctor, don't get me wrong. I just want to know where you got this newspaper. Jiang Cheng shrugged. Chen Xiaoming gave it to me. Her? Fatty was instantly suspicious. Doctor, I might not be as clever as you, but I'm not that dumb. She'd rather burn this than give it to you. Jiang Cheng pretended to sigh. At first, I didn't get it too, but now that I think about it, she might have a slight Stockholm syndrome. So I think. Fatty's heart dropped. What do you think? I think she might have fallen for me, Jiang Cheng said helplessly. Fatty. Jiang Cheng waited for a while, but Fatty said nothing, so he turned to ask, why didn't you say anything? Fatty took a deep breath. Wait for me to take a drag of a cigarette to calm down first. Just as Jiang Cheng wanted to share his analysis of why Chen Xiaoming had fallen for him, his stomach suddenly grumbled. Fatty instantly became spirited. He asked if Jiang Cheng was hungry and offered to cook. Jiang Cheng thought about Fatty's cooking skills in the mission and nodded as he pointed at the kitchen. Fatty slipped away, leaving Jiang Cheng looking at the newspaper in interest. Jiang Cheng rarely cooked, so he only had frozen food and instant noodles. He bought them when they were on sale. Fatty worked hard for half an hour and finally produced 2 dishes. He fried the instant noodles. Jiang Cheng slurped down most of them instantly. Doctor, Fatty took a few bites of the noodles. Do you normally live here alone? Jiang Cheng swept the rest of the food into his plate. Then, he wiped his lips. He nodded. Yes, and I have no interest in taking in a roommate. Fatty pouted and said, Doctor, don't be like that. Even though I'm not as clever or as handsome as you, I've done many jobs. I can help you somewhere. Jiang Cheng looked at the empty plates on the table and didn't answer. Fatty saw hope and became excited. He quickly said, Doctor, you don't need to make a decision now. Think about it. I'm very useful. We can talk about this tomorrow. Jiang Cheng worked his sore shoulders. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Fatty quickly cleaned up the table. The sound of water came from the kitchen. Doctor, you can go and sleep. I'll clean up everything and sleep on the couch. However, after Fatty was done with the dishes and came out of the kitchen, he saw Jiang Cheng sitting on the couch. He didn't seem to have moved. Doctor, Fatty asked, is there a problem? Jiang Cheng studied Fatty and raised his brows. You can sleep upstairs with me. I'm afraid of being alone. Fatty was startled. Then, he thought of something bad and instantly covered his butt. Doctor, I'm not that easy. No? Fatty thought about it and said firmly, of course. All right. Jiang Cheng stood up and shrugged casually. He moved to the stairs. When he was about to disappear upstairs, he turned around to say, you should be careful at night. Then, he pointed at the wall opposite. The door in my dream appeared that. And I was different from you. I didn't enter the door, but a giant hand came out of the door to pull me inside it. Then, he went upstairs. After Jiang Cheng left, Fatty sat on the couch and stared at the wall anxiously. He couldn't tell if Jiang Cheng was being real or not. He was too unpredictable, but in a way, he was reliable because he did lead him out of the dream realm alive. Once Fatty closed his eyes, he felt like the door Jiang Cheng mentioned would appear, and the giant arm would reach out. Fatty stayed downstairs for less than 5 minutes before bouncing upstairs. Then, he ran into Jiang Cheng, who was leaning against the side of the stairs. It looked like he was waiting for him. Before Fatty could say anything, Jiang Cheng said, "You'll take the living room. I'll sleep inside." Fatty looked behind Jiang Cheng. There was a door there that split up the small living room. The bedroom had to be inside. "Doctor," Fatty said seriously, "if you're scared of being alone, I can consider squeezing in with you." Jiang Cheng didn't feel like sleeping in bed. He looked at the ceiling. The scenes from the nightmare repeated in his mind. Fatty was outside the door. He suggested that Jiang Cheng keep the door open so that they could watch over each other. However, Jiang Cheng didn't think they needed that, so he rejected him. He not only closed the door, but also locked it too. Based on the earlier experience, Jiang Cheng naturally thought of the missing Hu Yan and Hu Yan's sister. Their disappearances probably had to do with the dream realm. Based on what Manly said, those who died in the dream realm would go missing in real life. It would happen without reason. Hu Yan's missing person report stated clearly that she was gone at midnight and wearing her light silk nightgown. Her husband, who was in bed with her, didn't even notice her gone. The middle-aged man in the first mission once asked the way to fully escape the dream realm. Manly said that was a stupid question. Once the iron door appeared in your dream, you couldn't escape until you died. He thought about it, and he became drowsy. Jiang Cheng didn't resist anything and slowly closed his eyes. The stamina exhausted in the dream realm returned to his body, but the mental exhaustion didn't recover. Jiang Cheng slept soundly. In his dream, he heard some banging sound like his neighbor was doing construction. Even the floor shook. He turned around and covered his head with the pillow, and continued to sleep. In the end, the thing that woke him up was a knock on the door. "Doctor," Fatty's loud voice came from outside the door. "Are you awake?" Jiang Cheng sat up and walked to open the door. The living room was empty. Fatty was gone. Jiang Cheng went down the stairs. The phone showed that it was 11 a.m. Jiang Cheng didn't expect to sleep until noon. His head was still dull from the sleep. Fatty poked his head out of the kitchen when he heard the sound. "Doctor, please sit first. The food will be ready soon." Jiang Cheng mumbled as he sat down on the couch. The experience last night flickered in his mind, causing him a headache. He looked up and realized someone had cleaned up his office. The shelf where he put the patient's file had shown signs of falling to the side, so Jiang Cheng wrapped it up with tape. The tape had been cleaned. The broken parts had been fixed with nails. Even the rust had been cleaned away. The messy wires on the ceiling and walls had been carefully arranged and pinned to where they should be. A folded ladder leaned against the wall. A piece of paper was squeezed in between, afraid that the rung of the ladder would dirty the wall. An old newspaper sat on the table. On the paper was a hammer, a pair of scissors, black electrical tape, and metallic nails. These should be the source of the banging. "Doctor," Fatty's voice accompanied the sound of water out of the kitchen. "Do you eat spicy food? I've made braised ribs." "Sure," Jiang Cheng shouted, "but don't put too much chili. I'm scared of breaking out 'cause I'm still in my puberty." Fatty paused before resuming. Jiang Cheng was leaning on the couch when the phone in his pocket vibrated. He took out it and answered it. "Dr. Jiang," a man's voice came from the phone. It sounded very young. "Are you at your office now?" "Yes." "Then, I'll head over now," the man said happily. "I'm just around. I'll be there in half an hour." "Okay." Jiang Cheng nodded and hung up. Fatty walked out, holding the edge of the pot with some napkins. He rushed over and then quickly put the pot down. His fingers were red from the heat. When he saw Jiang Cheng look at him, he chuckled shyly. He said since he hadn't found a good cooking pot, he made do with a non-heat resistant pot. "There's a kitchen cloth in the kitchen," Jiang Cheng said. Fatty was startled before he reacted that Jiang Cheng was referring to his hurt fingers. He couldn't help but be a little touched. His eyes watered. "Dr. Jiang, thank But Jiang Cheng looked at the napkin he used and pouted. Do you think the napkins are free? Regardless, Fatty's cooking was flawless. Jiang Cheng alone ate half the pot of ribs and 2 bowls of rice. If Fatty hadn't moved fast to grab the last piece of rib, he might not even know what his own cooking tastes like. So, what do you think? Fatty looked at Jiang Cheng with anticipation. Doctor, my cooking is not bad, right? I don't mean to brag, but I've once studied under the chef at Zuexian Lu. Jiang Cheng put down his bowl and wiped away the oil on his lips. So. He suddenly burped and continued, but since you've worked so hard, I would feel bad not eating more. The light in Fatty's eyes dimmed, like a child who didn't get the praise he wanted from the adult. He silently put away the pot and bowls and returned to the kitchen. The sound of water even managed to sound sad and despondent. Jiang Cheng looked at the table, which was so clean his reflections could be seen. He said, Fatty? The sound in the kitchen paused. Then, Fatty's voice came out. Doctor, did you call me? I have a client coming, Jiang Cheng said calmly. So, I need you to. Fatty sighed and replied, I know. I'll leave after I clean up everything. He paused. No matter what, thank you for saving me in the nightmare. Soon, Fatty walked out of the kitchen, wiping his hands. Jiang Cheng leaned on the couch. He opened his eyes when Fatty passed by. Fatty picked up the coat hanging on the rack and put it on. As he was about to say something, Jiang Cheng interrupted him. There's a supermarket nearby. They sell a lot of things, and they are cheap. Fatty frowned with confusion. I want to eat stew tonight, Jiang Cheng said shamelessly. Since stew takes time, you better come back soon. Fatty's confusion was replaced by appreciation. He quickly nodded. Don't worry, doctor. Fatty then disappeared like the wind. Jiang Cheng stood up and walked to the shelf. His fingers scanned most of them before pulling one out. The record belonged to Hu Yan. The document recorded Hu Yan's reaction when she was there. It was very detailed, including her habits of shaking her leg and looking in a certain direction. She was looking at the place where the door would appear. Hu Yan disappeared after she dreamed of a door. Based on what she said, her little sister experienced the same thing. This was similar to Jiang Cheng, but also different. At least Hu Yan and her sister could tell others about the dream regarding the door. The sister told Hu Yan on the phone, and Hu Yan told Jiang Cheng in person. In other words, they didn't enter the door when they dreamed of the door. It was different for Jiang Cheng and Fatty. They were in the dream realm once they dreamed of the door. When there was a knocking on the door, Jiang Cheng sat in the office. He flipped through another document and said without lifting his head, "Come in." The door opened, and a very young man came in. He was in an Armani suit, a gold-edged shirt, a blue and white striped tie, and a pair of brown leather shoes. They looked like they were handmade in Italy. Dr. Jiang, the young man smiled kindly. He slightly bowed, and he radiated charm. Jiang Cheng slowly put down the file and then glanced at him. Pai Yuan, is it still about your girlfriend? Yes. The man smiled. This has troubled me so much. Why else would I be here, Dr. Jiang? When the two were chatting, Fatty came back holding bags of ingredients. Pai Yuan was shocked to see Fatty. After Jiang Cheng slowly introduced Fatty as his friend, Pai Yuan instantly welcomed Fatty like an old friend. Fatty was overwhelmed. Hello. Pai Yuan grabbed Fatty's free hand. I'm Pai Yuan. Nice to meet you. Fatty was very confused, so he turned to Jiang Cheng. As usual, he saw nothing on Jiang Cheng's face, so he turned back to the young man before him. He said with some regret and shyness, "Brother, I'm sorry that you have this illness at such a young age, but I'm not the doctor, and I can't help you." Pai Yuan's hand froze in midair. Fatty suddenly remembered he needed to go cook, so he said goodbye and disappeared into the kitchen. Jiang Cheng didn't dwell on this. He asked Pai Yuan to sit back down and asked, "How is your girlfriend now?" Pai Yuan sighed. She's about the same, if a little worse than before. She keeps suspecting me of cheating on her. Paiwan suddenly became agitated and stressed. Dr. Jiang, you know me. How could I be that kind of person? Jiang Cheng took out a blue notebook and wrote something on it. I know. Then, Paiwan started to pour out his heartache. He counted the sacrifices he had made for his girlfriend, but only got misunderstandings in return. At one point, he even started to cry. After Fatty cleaned the ribs, he put them into the pot to boil. When the pot started to bubble, Fatty washed his hands and exited the kitchen. Paiwan was still unloading his story. Jiang Cheng didn't show much empathy. He nodded and grumbled here and there to show that he was listening. Fatty was curious about Jiang Cheng's work, so he pulled over a chair to sit down and observe. Both Paiwan and Jiang Cheng had no issues with this. When he heard the story between Paiwan and his girlfriend, Fatty couldn't help himself and wanted to console the man, but he was shot agazed by Jiang Cheng. Fatty silently swallowed his words back. Dr. Jiang, Paiwan was finally tired. As he rubbed the middle of his brows, he sighed, that's the overall situation. My girlfriend suspects that I have an ulterior motive to be with her. Jiang Cheng closed the notebook and slid his pen into the spine. Dr. Jiang, please help me with my girlfriend. He stood up and asked Jiang Cheng sincerely, I beg you. Jiang Cheng nodded. Of course, it's my job. Paiwan left with a heavy sigh. Once he left, Fatty leaned over. Doctor, the man is not bad. Even though he's rather forward, he is very concerned about his girlfriend. I wonder why his girlfriend would think he has an ulterior motive to be with her. Jiang Cheng pulled open the drawer and placed the notebook inside it. Is that what you think? Fatty blinked in confusion. Doctor, what do you mean? Jiang Cheng signaled Fatty to be quiet. A few seconds later, the door opened again. Paiwan strode in and said with apology, Dr. Jiang, my memory is getting worse. I almost forgot the most important thing. It's my girlfriend's 80th birthday the day after tomorrow. You have to come. Jiang Cheng said evenly, congratulations. I'll be there. After he got the answer, Paiwan left happily. Fatty's mouth was an O. When the door opened, Fatty noticed there was a young woman outside the door. She had on a white shirt, black shirt, and a pair of black-rimmed glasses. She was intellectual and sexy. After Paiwan exited the door, he habitually put his arms around the woman's waist and they left while laughing. Fatty silently picked up his shattered worldview. Jiang Cheng put away the files on the table and arranged them on the shelves. When he turned back, he saw Fatty was still staring at the door. A blue Audi zoomed away. What are you looking at? Jiang Cheng asked. Doctor, Fatty suddenly said, I don't want to work so hard anymore. I feel like his joy is very simple. Jiang Cheng thought about it and turned back to the shelf. He pulled out a few more notebooks with a few red labels. He opened one and turned to Fatty. He placed the rest under his armpit. Zhao Guiqing, he recited, an entrepreneur with 9 bungalows and endless branded cars under her name. She is worth more than billions. She is currently 89. He lifted his head to look at Fatty, and single. Fatty's lips trembled like he wanted to say something. Jiang Cheng nodded with understanding and then pulled out another note. Lu Nyoma, a landlady with more than 10 apartments. She's 77 and also single. He put down the note and told Fatty seriously, she sounds young, but she has a serious illness. Plus, she has no next of kin. Fatty took a deep breath and said determinedly, Doctor, I think I'm still young, and I can still make something of myself. Jiang Cheng tooted and put his notes away with some regret. Fatty followed Jiang Cheng and asked with confusion, Doctor, how did you get these people's information? Are they your patients? I suppose so, Jiang Cheng shrugged. What illness do they have? Jiang Cheng looked at Fatty and said clearly, they are lonely and cold at night. Fatty shivered. Then, his eyes widened like he realized something. Was it you who introduced Paiwan to his current girlfriend? Jiang Cheng scratched his nose with embarrassment. That's my job as a doctor. I am very happy seeing the smiles finally returning to their faces. Fatty, doctor, tell me honestly, how much money you've taken from the rich ladies? Jiang Cheng ignored him and went upstairs alone. He was busy with something mysterious. Fatty calculated the time. The stew would need another hour before it was ready. He washed the greens he bought and peeled the potatoes and yams. He decided to stir-fry some shredded potatoes. The only flaw was there was only a dull fruit knife available in the kitchen since Jiang Cheng almost never cooked. This meant that certain dishes couldn't be perfected. The shredded potatoes had to become potato pieces. Fatty didn't think Jiang Cheng would mind. After everything was ready, Fatty walked out of the kitchen. He picked up the tools and continued to fix the office. He took out a screwdriver that didn't come from Jiang Cheng's office and tightened the screws on Jiang Cheng's movable shelves. He gave them a few whacks and then taped the corners together. Fatty shook the shelf to see whether it was stable or not when he spotted a blue outfit hanging among the clothes. It was quite well hidden. Fatty moved the other clothes and was shocked to realize it was a blue qipao. It had short sleeves and was made from actual silk. It had embroidery of peonies on it. It was clearly quite expensive. It even had a light fragrance on it. This was clearly a woman's clothes. Fatty was immediately interested. At that moment, footsteps came from upstairs. A few seconds later, Jiang Cheng appeared with a bucket of clothes. He saw Fatty looking at him strangely. "What are you doing?" Jiang Cheng carried the bucket with the overflowing clothes. "Doctor," Fatty winked at Jiang Cheng as men tended to do, "I found a qipao among your clothes." Jiang Cheng frowned. "It is blue in color. The slit is up to here." He gestured with his hands. Fatty didn't mean any malice. Everything about Jiang Cheng was mysterious to Fatty. This was a joy of discovering someone else's secret. Jiang Cheng became serious. This intrigued Fatty even more. Finally, he managed to surprise Jiang Cheng. He became interested in Jiang Cheng's explanation. "Did you only find one?" Jiang Cheng put down the bucket and rummaged through it. "It shouldn't be. There should be a tight-fitting pink one and a white one with fringe." Jiang Cheng lifted his head to tell Fatty, "Help me look." "Fatty." Jiang Cheng turned the bucket over to shake the clothes out. Fatty was shocked until his pupils widened. He thought the incident with Pai Yuan was the biggest shock of the day, but he was wrong. The clothes rolled out of the bucket. Fatty took a quick glance at them. Most of them were female clothes. There were all kinds of styles. The qipao he saw earlier was nothing. Fatty finally understood what kind of person he was with. He ultimately had underestimated Jiang Cheng. He not only managed to find a lover for someone like Paiwan, but he also was involved in the game himself. "Why are you suddenly so quiet?" Jiang Cheng asked. Fatty took a deep breath and replaced the clothes to hide the qipao. Then, he turned to Jiang Cheng, "Doctor, I feel either I'm crazy or the world is crazy." Jiang Cheng looked around. "I think you've misunderstood something. These clothes don't belong to those people you imagine. I'm not Pai Yuan. I have my principles." Fatty covered his face and wanted the doctor to shut up. However, he didn't voice them. Fatty calmed down and asked, "Then, who did these clothes belong to?" Then, he seemed to realize something, and he looked better. "It's your girlfriend, right, doctor?" Then, Fatty looked embarrassed. That was the reasonable answer. What was he thinking? Honestly, Jiang Cheng looked handsome. As long as he didn't open his mouth, he looked like a normal person. Plus, he had a respectable job. "No," Jiang Cheng shook his head. "They belong to be my landlady and my boss. She left these clothes here." Fatty shivered, and the way he looked at Jiang Cheng changed. Suddenly, his world collapsed. Jiang Cheng left him be. He picked up the scattered clothes, hugged the bucket, and went to the bathroom. There was a giant washing machine there. He walked out of the bathroom and grabbed the blue qipao. He looked around but failed to find the other 2 clothes he mentioned. He grumbled and left. Soon, the washing machine was turned on. Either the load was too much or the machine was too old. The rumbling was very loud. It was hard to think the clothes would come out clean. Fatty came to the door alone. He took out a cigarette and lit it up. His eyes were blank and lost. While the machine worked, Jiang Cheng took out the empty bucket and put it beside the stairs. Then, he looked at the narrow stairs and kicked the bucket closer to the corner. He turned around and saw Fatty's melancholic profile. The face was filled with stories. "Fatty," Jiang Cheng said naturally, "I think I smell the ribs. See if it's ready." Fatty dropped the cigarette and turned to the kitchen. When he passed by Jiang Cheng, he paused for a few seconds. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but he said nothing in the end. Soon, the meat fragrance filled the room. Fatty carried the pot over. Jiang Cheng placed a piece of cloth in the middle of the table. The pot settled on the cloth. Then, Fatty took out the potato dish and 2 bowls of rice. "Doctor," after he saw Jiang Cheng finish the second bowl of rice, Fatty said, "You can slow down. No one is going to steal your food." Jiang Cheng poured himself a bowl of soup and gurgled it down. He then put down the bowls and wiped his lips with satisfaction. By then, Fatty had barely finished half of his first bowl. Jiang Cheng asked with a concerned tone, "Why aren't you eating?" Fatty looked at the 2 pieces of potatoes and some leaves floating in the bowl and slowly put down his chopsticks. "Doctor, I'm on a diet." "All right." Jiang Cheng nodded. "I won't tell you to eat anymore." After the meal, Fatty went to clean the dishes while Jiang Cheng sat at the office table. The typing noise showed his carefree nature. Fatty came back to sit on the couch after he was done with the dishes. As he dried his hands, he asked Jiang Cheng about his job. Jiang Cheng answered easily. Fatty blinked in confusion. "Doctor, I saw a lot of medicine in the kitchen cabinets. Most of them are for physical wounds. There are also painkillers. Why do you keep so many of them?" Jiang Cheng looked very healthy. Fatty felt like he even ate more than he did. The medicine was clearly not for him. To Fatty's surprise, Jiang Cheng revealed a thoughtful look. Then, he went to the kitchen to grab a painkiller patch. Jiang Cheng opened the box and took a slip out. Then, he turned around to look at Fatty judgingly. He would lower his head to look at the patch too. Fatty was befuddled by his action. He suddenly had a bad feeling. "Doctor," he asked in panic, "why are you looking at me like that?" "No reason." Jiang Cheng put away the patch and replaced the box. Then, he sat back down at his table like nothing happened. Fatty thought about what had happened in the nightmare realm and shrugged. The afternoon passed like that. Since there was no customer, Fatty cleaned up the office and then fell asleep on the couch. When he woke up, the sky was already dark. Fatty rubbed his eyes and realized that Jiang Cheng was gone. When he failed to find Jiang Cheng in the kitchen, he woke up instantly. The sky was dark. A nightmare might descend at any moment. Without Jiang Cheng, Fatty would definitely die in the nightmare realm. "Doctor," Fatty called out. There was no response. Fatty panicked. Just as he was about to go upstairs, the front door opened and a lanky shadow fell in. Jiang Cheng entered the room with bags and then closed the door. "Doctor," Fatty said excitedly, like he had seen hope. "Where have you been?" Jiang Cheng handed the bags to Fatty. Fatty saw that they were filled with medicine, the same kind he saw in the kitchen cabinets. "These are medicine." Jiang Cheng removed his jacket and said, "Put them in the cabinets you saw in the afternoon." "Doctor, why did you buy so much medicine?" Jiang Cheng came to the shelf with the medical documents and pulled out a red document. As he flipped through it, he said, "They will come in handy in the future." Fatty was confused. There were only 2 of them, and neither of them was injured. Suddenly, Fatty thought about the scene in the bungalow. His legs chilled. He wondered if Jiang Cheng was a crazy kidnapper like the family from the bungalow. These medicines were prepared for him to prevent him from dying during torture. The more Fatty thought about it, the more confirmed he was regarding his hypothesis. Jiang Cheng was just acting all this time. No wonder he saw through the family's conspiracy so easily. They were the same kind of people. Just as he tried to figure out the way to escape, Jiang Cheng's voice floated over, "No one will be interested in trapping and detaining a Fatty." Fatty whipped his head at Jiang Cheng. The man leaned against the table and flipped through his notes. He didn't even raise his head. Jiang Cheng turned another page and said, "You can leave at any time. But I have to warn you, once you leave that door, you are not coming back." "Can I really leave?" Hearing that, Fatty hesitated again. The man before him was definitely different from normal, but he didn't seem like an evil person. A few seconds later, Fatty made his decision. "Doctor, I think I'll stay. That way, we can look after each other." He licked his lips and asked, "But can you tell me what the medicine is for?" Jiang Cheng sighed as if having solved a problem. He put away the file and lifted his head to look at Fatty, his eyes asking if he wanted to know. Fatty nodded consecutively. Jiang Cheng pursed his lips. After a serious consideration, he said, "Okay, I'll tell you, but you can't tell anyone else. This is very important to me." Fatty was affected by Jiang Cheng's words. He sat up straight and became serious, like he was taking an oath. He believed this had something to do with Jiang Cheng's hidden illness. When facing Chen Xiaoming, he mentioned only needing 30 seconds. Perhaps he was not lying. Fatty suddenly pitied the handsome man before him. God was fair. Everyone had a pain hidden deep inside their heart. Jiang Cheng suddenly became willing to share his secrets. Fatty then turned to Jiang Cheng with encouragement. "Doctor, I'm ready. You can start now." "Okay." Jiang Cheng nodded. "The bandage is to tie you up. The medical bandage is to seal up your mouth to stop him from calling for help. The painkillers will help keep you awake during the torture. I have 2 boxes of adrenaline here. They are so hard to find and very pricey. I might not use them on you." Jiang Cheng snapped his fingers like he had just thought of something. "Right. I also prepared some hallucinogens to put in your water. Wait for me, I'll give them for you to drink." "Fatty, doctor, don't scare me, please." Fatty shivered and said, "I might look large, but I can't stand being scared." Jiang Cheng glanced at him. Considering his cooking skills, he decided to stop scaring Fatty. He stopped talking. Ever since he joined Jiang Cheng, Fatty became a lot more adaptable. Soon, he bounced all over the place again. "Doctor," Fatty licked his lips and whispered, "Do you think we'll enter the nightmare realm tonight?" There was danger everywhere in the nightmare realm. The absurd yet realistic feeling was terrifying. Jiang Cheng, who was hanging the laundry, paused. He thought about it and then replied, "I don't think so. Even though our stamina fully recovered once we left the nightmare realm, the mental strain on us is still strong." Fatty understood Jiang Cheng. The mental energy exhausted in the nightmare realm wouldn't recover like the stamina. If this continued without stopping, they would eventually be drained by the nightmares. From what Man Li and Sister Nguyen said, as scary as the nightmare was, it would always give the travelers a chance at survival. "That's good." Fatty sighed and then said, "I wonder if I should keep staying up. It's pointless." Jiang Cheng shook his head. "How many nights can you stay up? When your body can't sustain it anymore, you'll fall asleep and instantly die in the nightmare realm." The word "die" chilled Fatty. He quickly said that he was just grumbling and he didn't really mean to do that. "Do you want coffee?" Jiang Cheng walked to the kitchen and asked Fatty. Fatty was shocked by the treatment. "Thank you, doctor." Cling and clang came from the kitchen. Jiang Cheng took down 2 cups from the rack. "American, Italian, latte or cappuccino?" Fatty said awkwardly, "Doctor, I don't know coffee. I normally go for the cheap $1 instant coffee at the supermarket." "How about a cappuccino, then?" "I'm sorry," Jiang Cheng said, "I've run out." "Latte then. All out as well." American? Nope. Then, Italian. Fatty shrunk his head. Sorry for the trouble, doctor. It's no trouble. Jiang Cheng shouted, because I've run out of that too. Fatty was stunned. You have no American, Italian, latte and cappuccino? Then, what do you have? Instant coffee. Jiang Cheng walked out with 2 cups of coffee. But I have to correct you. Now, 1 pack of instant coffee is $1.50 and not $1. The price has risen. If this is all you have, why did you ask me to choose? Fatty was confused. Jiang Cheng sat across from Fatty, sipped his coffee and elaborated slowly, because life needs rituals. Fatty felt like it was pointless to argue with Jiang Cheng. He cleverly chose to shut up. Drink it while it's hot. Jiang Cheng said, I didn't put too many drugs this time. Try it, and we'll have a frame of reference in the future. Fatty. The night deepened. The neon in the city lit up. Fatty cupped his chin and looked out the window in a daze. After experiencing the nightmare, he appreciated the simplicity of life. Jiang Cheng lay on the office couch and watched a horror film. He ate French fries with tomato sauce. He called Fatty to join him, but the latter didn't move. Jiang Cheng almost fell asleep after watching A Wicked Ghost. He opened his eyes and saw Fatty curled up on the couch, his hands over his ears. He looked very uncomfortable. Fatty saw that Jiang Cheng was awake, and his eyes shone like he had found his savior. Doctor, what movie is this? How is the ghost so scary? After hearing Fatty's explanation, Jiang Cheng understood Fatty wanted to switch off the movie when he heard a strange singing. He then was frightened by the appearance of Beauty Chu. The ghost you said is Beauty Chu. Jiang Cheng explained, she's a poor woman suffering in the old age of China. She's the inspiration behind Lu Xun's Paris La Traviata Chronicles. Fatty didn't understand what Jiang Cheng said. Jiang Cheng turned off the computer and went upstairs to sleep. Fatty said he felt a bit cold yesterday night, so Jiang Cheng found him a new mattress. As Jiang Cheng walked into the bedroom, Fatty told him that if Jiang Cheng was scared after watching the horror movie, they could sleep together. Instantly, the bedroom door slammed closed, and the door was locked. Fatty lay down unwillingly. Jiang Cheng reminded him to put on his clothes and shoes before sleeping. Therefore, Fatty brushed his shoes in the morning and then bought a pair of running shoes when he was out shopping for ingredients. The office was rather secluded, and it was quiet at night. Jiang Cheng pulled the blanket to his chin out of habit. His breathing was even. His physique was different from normal. He wasn't that sensitive to temperature and rarely fell sick. Sometimes, he felt like an emotionless robot. He slumbered. The sleep was deep as a strange melody echoed in his ears. It was not pop or classical music. It was a genre he didn't recognize. The sound was born in the dark. Jiang Cheng felt everything leaving him. He seemed to sink into the ocean or walk into an endless tunnel. Despair and nothing else. There was a tearing sound like a black cotton cloth had been shredded. Jiang Cheng started awake. He realized he was standing at the corner of the first floor office, and before him was a black iron door. His body moved faster than his brain. He reached out to push open the door. After a spell of dizziness, his feet found the ground again. Before him, it was something that looked like a school. The compound wasn't that big. A few buildings stood underneath the setting sun. It was quite romantic. Jiang Cheng narrowed his eyes. He observed that it was around 4 to 5 p.m. in this world. Temporarily, he saw no one else, and the school gate was closed. He shielded his eyes from the sunlight. He glanced at the school and then decidedly turned around to head down the other direction. There were buildings 2 and 3 stories tall across from him. There were businesses one would find around a school, like eateries, bookstores, internet cafes, and so on. The internet cafe had good business, but the female boss who stood in front of the bookstore looked very pissed. Jiang Cheng walked to a cafe and paused at the door for a few seconds before walking in. There was no one on the first floor. He found the stairs and headed up to the second floor. He noticed that the window seats were all taken. Around 8 customers turned their eyes to Jiang Cheng. Dr. Fatty, who was squeezed into the corner, looked at Jiang Cheng with watery eyes. "It's so good to see you here." Jiang Cheng was surprised to see Fatty there, but he only glanced at him before turning away. That group appeared to be his teammates for this mission. It was more than last time. There were 8, including Jiang Cheng. "Hello." A man in a white suit stood up to greet Jiang Cheng. "You're amazing to be able to find this place on your own." He was right that Jiang Cheng didn't choose this cafe randomly. Most of the surrounding buildings were low. The cafe provided the best vantage point. Furthermore, there was a large glass window on the 3rd floor where one could easily look into the school. Jiang Cheng looked at the school outside the window before turning around. "Is the school the location of the mission?" "It should be." The man in the suit shrugged. "I've already asked the waiter here. That is not a normal school, but an art school." Just as the man was about to continue, a loud roar interrupted him. "Where is this place? Who are you?" "I'm calling the cops." Jiang Cheng turned his head and saw a middle-aged man in a tank top yelling agitatedly. It appeared to be his first time in the nightmare realm. "We've told you what you needed to know. It's not our issue if you want to accept it or not." A young man with a cap leaned on the chair. He narrowed his eyes at the middle-aged man and suddenly chuckled. "I'm not your father, so I don't care whether you live or die. I'm calling the cops. I'm suing you for illegally detaining me." The middle-aged man growled, but Jiang Cheng knew at first glance that it was because he was scared. The middle-aged man should have known that this world was different from the real world, but his heart had been resisting it. Or else he could have chosen to leave instead of staying. There were 3 newbies this time. Other than the middle-aged man, there was a boy and a girl. The girl wore a set of cute dinosaur pajamas. A white fluffy tail trailed at the back. Her face was so white that she might faint at any time. The man was better. However, based on what Fatty told him later when the man first arrived, he was worse than the middle-aged man. He threatened everyone present and even flipped the cafe table. "Enough," the suited man said very naturally. "Since everyone is here, we should go to the school." "Must the school be the mission venue?" The person who spoke was a woman in a qipao. She had on light makeup. Her body was amazing, but her appearance was normal. "Not necessarily." The suited man smiled. "But we should still try. We know that we'll only run into those things at the real mission venue." When the man mentioned those things, everyone became serious. The group left the cafe. Even the angry middle-aged man walked at the back silently. Fatty used this chance to get close to Jiang Cheng and whispered, "Doctor, I was so scared when I came here and didn't see you." Jiang Cheng didn't waste time. "How did you find the cafe?" Fatty licked his lips and said shyly, "I didn't find it. I descended there. I was standing on top of the 3rd floor table of this cafe after I opened the door. The school was displayed right before my eyes." Jiang Cheng glanced at Fatty. After some time, he asked, "What about the others?" "They arrived later than me." "Did they all start at the cafe?" "Not all." Fatty shook his head and then lifted his chin. The suited man was comforting the girl in the pajamas. "The white suit found the place like you did." Jiang Cheng sucked in a breath. "In other words, other than him and me, 7 of you were born in the cafe. You even directly appeared on the 3rd floor table." "Doctor, I can't refute that." Fatty looked calmer than the first time he was in a nightmare. At least he wasn't stuttering. "But, please don't use the term, born. I prefer descended." Jiang Cheng tooted and was about to lecture Fatty when they arrived at the school gate. There was no one at the gate, but a smaller door at the side creaked. Then, a middle-aged woman walked out. She said she was the welcoming teacher who came to welcome them. Since they didn't know the mission content and their identity, everyone chose to follow the middle-aged woman or the first NPC silently. Normally, the first NPC was there to help the players understand the world building and so on. After communicating with the woman, they knew their roles. They were the camera crew from an entertainment company. They were invited by the school to shoot the school's imminent anniversary event. As the suited man said, this was an art school. They took in music students. The school was small but very famous. They had many celebrity alums, according to the middle-aged woman. Your company has sent the devices over yesterday. The woman said, they are currently situated in the prop room. Don't worry. Can we go to the prop room then? The young man with the cap suddenly asked. He had turned his cap around. Something was embedded in the ear stud he had. It glowed under the sun. The woman stopped. When she saw the young man, her face darkened. No, definitely not. Everyone was shocked by this sudden change. Fatty slithered back and pulled Jiang Cheng with him. The girl in the pajama tripped and almost fell. The suited man casually pulled the young man back and walked to the woman. The smile on his face was warm and friendly. We were just asking. After all, the equipment is very fragile. We just want to make sure nothing gets damaged during the transportation process so that everything will proceed finely during the event. It had to be said that the man looked handsome and had a gift of the gab. Even the woman seemed infected by him, and her face returned to normal. She said with some embarrassment, please don't misunderstand. What I meant was it's already late, and the staff at the prop room probably has left work already. The suited man nodded with understanding. Of course. Then, we can look at it when it's more convenient. Jiang Cheng studied the man's performance with no expression on his face. The suited man maintained a smile on his face as if he didn't know about the dangers of this world. Doctor, Fatty whispered, do you also think that man is not a good person? Jiang Cheng glanced at him. I don't know about that, but I'm sure he's not a simple man. So do we need to be cautious of him or not? Ever since the last mission, Fatty understood that danger came not only from the ghosts, but also from your teammates. To his surprise, Jiang Cheng shrugged. Just treat him normally. People who stand out at the start of the mission can only be considered as not simple but not scary. The real danger is always hidden, just like a poisonous snake. Fatty narrowed his eyes and looked at their company. Suddenly, he felt like no one was trustworthy. He walked closer to the doctor. They were basically stuck together. The school was larger than they thought. It was pretty too. The roads were decorated with lush trees. When they passed by a small garden, the garden was filled with blooms. If they were not in the middle of a mission, it was quite a nice stroll. The leading woman said very little. Thankfully, she answered every question they had, so they got some information about the school from her. The school was called Yuing Music Academy. It was an elite school. The school might be big, but there was a small student population. A class had less than 20 students. When they passed by the main teaching building, the woman purposely paused. However, when she realized Jiang Cheng's group had no intention of taking a picture for a souvenir, she led them away. Since it was still time for class, the whole school compound was empty. The woman led them to an old hostel building. It used the construction style from decades ago. It didn't fit with the modern atmosphere of the school. The old door axle creaked noisily. You can stay here, the middle-aged woman said expressively as she pointed down the darkness. If you want to eat, just go to the canteen. You have the employee card so you can use both the student and staff canteen. Just avoid the lunch hour. The woman in the qipao hugged her arms and said, is this place even hospitable? It's so dirty. She looked at the wall with disdain. She fanned the air and complained, it smells too. It's already nice that we have a place to stay. Why so many complaints? The young man with the cap suddenly cut in. To everyone's surprise, it was the middle-aged woman who became the peacemaker. Don't worry. The place doesn't look like much on the outside, but I've cleaned all of your rooms. You can stay here without worry. Since the NPC had said that, they couldn't say anything else. It was clear that most people were not satisfied with this arrangement. Of course, their main concern was not the cleanliness but the oppressive nature of this building. Everyone could sense the uncomfortable presence, even just standing there. It was hard to describe. The building felt like it was alive, looking at them. The woman gave the suited man 4 keys. Jiang Cheng noticed that they were old copper keys. They were very hard to find nowadays. Each key had a white tape stuck to the end. A number was written on it with a blue pen. 404, 405, 406, 407. 4 rooms. Jiang Cheng walked to open the door closest to the first floor lobby. The moment the door opened, a cloud of rotten air wafted out. He quickly jumped back. After the air cleared, the scene inside could be seen clearly. There were 2 beds in the room, one on the left and the other on the right. There were celebrity posters on the wall, but they were faded. There were also 2 small tables. The hostel had been abandoned for a long time. The tables were stacked together and pushed against the wall. The room was scattered with trash and empty bottles covered in a layer of dust. The room only had half of a window. The other half was shattered by something, and the wind howled through the giant hole. All the rooms should have the same layout as a twin bedroom. Jiang Cheng didn't casually enter this strange room. He backed away and asked the woman, "There will only be 8 beds and 4 rooms, but there are 9 of us." "That's right," Fatty added. "How do you expect us to sleep here?" He wanted the woman to move them to another location. Even if they had to sleep on the ground of some classroom, it was better than this place. The woman revealed a mysterious smile. "I'll have to trouble you tonight. Perhaps you won't need a place to sleep after that." Fatty's expression froze. "Okay," Jiang Cheng said, "we'll stay here tonight. By the way, when is the ceremony? We need to prepare for it." 7 days from now." Jiang Cheng nodded. "If we have time, can we tour the school?" The suited man asked. "It's so beautiful here. We won't have the chance to visit a place like this." The woman thought about it and then answered with some difficulty. "Okay. However, pay attention to the time. You have to return to your room before the sky darkens." "I don't quite understand," the suited man said gently. "Is there anything unusual going to happen after dark?" The woman turned around and regarded him with a strange gaze. The man didn't avoid her gaze. He smiled at her until she moved her eyes away. Then, she turned and left. She didn't say anything. The middle-aged man with the tank top wanted to rush after her to ask for more details, but the woman turned around the corner and disappeared like a ghost. "Where did she go?" the middle-aged man asked in a trembling voice. He couldn't understand this world at all. "If you want to know, you can keep on chasing after her," the young man in the cap said through the chewing of his gum. He shrugged at the man. "Perhaps she'll bring you with her." The middle-aged man could sense everyone's dissatisfaction with him, so he stopped talking and stayed with the group. The deeper they went into the hostel, the clearer the strange feeling. The creepiness surrounded them. It was like there were pairs of red eyes staring at them from the dark. The damp air assaulted them. The smell of mildew was mixed with an unknown substance. Since the corridor was littered with trash, they had to move things around. The hostel building looked unpresentable. There were black molds and yellow stains on the walls everywhere. Strange materials scabbed on the ground. The place looked deserted. "Doctor," Fatty frowned as he moved over. He wanted to say something but was stopped by Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng took a big step forward to move away from Fatty. The girl with the pajama stayed in the middle of the group. Her eyes were red as she rubbed her shoulders and whispered, "This place feels wrong, like something bad has happened here." The young man touched his cap and scoffed, "Isn't that a given? Why else would this place be abandoned otherwise? What could have happened here?" The middle-aged man shivered. The young man grinned with disdain and then purposely said in a creepy tone, "Maybe someone has died here." Hearing that, a few people in the group trembled visibly. The girl in the pajama started to cry. However, she tried her best to keep her crying to a minimum, afraid that it might attract the wrong attention. Regardless, this was not the real world, and no one was brimming with pity. Or rather, those who showed pity had already died in the missions. Even the suited man couldn't help but show a trace of disdain. However, he quickly wiped that emotion off his face. Jiang Cheng captured this detail. "Brother in the suit!" Jiang Cheng shouted. The man turned around in confusion. "What is it?" "I think you're a good man," Jiang Cheng said sincerely. "I think our chance of surviving is much higher with you in our team. You're so nice and so willing to help others." The suited man was startled. He thought about it and couldn't understand why Jiang Cheng would suddenly say that. However, he enjoyed the compliment because it helped build his persona. "It's nothing." The suited man lifted his chin and smiled. His hair was well combed. "It's not easy for us to meet. I'll do my best to lead everyone out of here safely." This was Fatty's first time hearing Jiang Cheng praise someone. Instantly, a bad feeling entered his heart. "Well said," Jiang Cheng gasped before turning to the newbies like the girl and the middle-aged man. "This brother has stated his stance. Why don't you hurry up and stick with him? He'll protect you. He's our guardian angel." The suited man. "Fatty, why does this feel so familiar?" Almost instantly, a group of people rushed to the suited man's side. The girl looked weak, but she was the first to reach the suited man and grab his left arm. The other newbie young man was slower and grabbed his right arm. The middle-aged man was slower to react because of his age. When he reached the suited man, he could only extend his arm to grab the man's collar. Just like that, the suited man was pushed to the front of the team. He couldn't reject them even if he wanted to. To make matters worse, he had to comfort these people in his gentle tone. Eventually, they reached the 4th floor. The suited man finally got rid of the people suffocating, using the excuse that he needed to get the key. His face was red because those people sucked the oxygen out of him and because of Jiang Cheng. At that moment, Jiang Cheng looked at him with the deepest admiration. "Okay," the suited man began, "since everyone trusts me, I'll divide up the rooms." The woman in the qipao and the girl in the pajama stayed in room 407. The two newbies, the young man and the middle-aged man with the tank top and a woman with dark skin, stayed in room 406. The suited man and the young man with the cap stayed in room 405. The suited man's smile brightened when he saw Jiang Cheng. "Brother, I sense that you already knew this large brother beside you before this. In that case, you too can stay in room 404. 4 was a taboo number. Undeniably, this was the suited man's revenge. Fatty was about to reject it when Jiang Cheng tapped his shoulders and said in an easy tone, "Okay, we'll follow the guardian angel's arrangement." The suited man could hear the sarcasm, but he had to act like he didn't care. Even Fatty felt sorry for him. It was clear that not everyone was satisfied with the room arrangement, but the day was darkening. No matter what, they had no choice but to return to their rooms. After all, being inside a room was safer than staying out. Fatty received the key and opened the door. Even though he was mentally prepared, when he walked into the room, he was still stunned. The place was very clean and neat. The bed was made, and the table was wiped clean. An unknown flower sat on the only windowsill. The flower was light purple in color and radiated a melancholic feeling. Fatty sighed with emotions. "Doctor, are we not like lotuses in this chaotic world? We don't know where we can take root because we might die in the next second." "Perhaps," Jiang Cheng sighed, "but at least you'll be by my side." Fatty was touched, and his eyes watered. "Doctor, I didn't expect we'd become so close after only a few days together. Aren't you touched that I'm here with you during the last moments of our lives?" Jiang Cheng looked at Fatty's sincere eyes and said, "Fatty, think about it. If you can survive, do you think the danger will kill me? There's a high chance I'll die after you." Jiang Cheng continued, "Therefore, don't you worry. If that day comes, I'll do my best to bring your ashes back to my office and pour you into my flower pots. With your size, the calcium in your body will be higher than normal. Fatty, we should search the room." Jiang Cheng inspected every corner of the room carefully. Other than a very small cupboard that he couldn't open, the place looked normal. After ensuring that it was safe, Fatty collapsed on the bed. At the same time, his stomach grumbled, "Doctor, I'm so hungry." However, it was already dark. Moving in the dark without any clues was stupid and dangerous. Furthermore, the woman who led them there warned them about moving in the dark. Jiang Cheng pulled out a big chocolate from his pocket. It had a red wrapping. Fatty remembered it from his childhood. "Where did you get that?" Fatty jumped off the bed instantly, his eyes glowing. "I got it while I was on the way." Jiang Cheng snapped off a piece and tossed it over. Fatty snatched it. Fatty took a small bite and then lifted his head to ask, "On the way to the cafe?" Fatty saw a lot of mini markets around the cafe. However, he couldn't figure out how Jiang Cheng bought the chocolate without any money. After they entered the nightmare realm, most of their belongings would disappear, including money. Jiang Cheng bit into the chocolate and looked out the dark window. He said, "I didn't buy it." "You didn't buy it?" "Yes." "Then, how did you get it?" Fatty's eyes widened like he realized something bad. "Did you steal it?" "Nonsense." Jiang Cheng glared at Fatty. "It was the female boss of the mini market who shoved it to me. I wanted to reject her, but she got mad at me." Fatty looked at Jiang Cheng with confusion. "Doctor, can you tell me where you found this boss? I want to meet her too." Jiang Cheng put down the chocolate and was about to get it with Fatty when Fatty gave up and sighed. "Doctor, you distracted me again. We are in the nightmare realm. We might die tomorrow." "Don't be so pessimistic." Jiang Cheng patted his shoulder. "You might not even survive tonight." Fatty, room 407. The girl with the pajamas curled on the bed and hid her shivering body under the blanket. "Big sister," the girl looked at the woman in the qipao and asked in a trembling tone, "Don't you think it's cold?" "Even though I'm under the blanket, I'm still so cold." Like Jiang Cheng, the first thing the woman in the qipao did after entering the room was to inspect the room carefully. Other than a broken comb found in the table drawer, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Even the trash can was very clean. "If you want to talk to me to normalize the situation, I'd advise you to save your breath." The woman in the qipao said in a cool tone, "It's pointless and will distract us and lower our chance of survival." The girl cowered from the woman's presence. She stopped talking, but her stomach still growled. "Turn around and close the curtain," the woman ordered. The girl's bed was next to the window. A blue curtain hung on the window. It was not big, but it was enough to cover up the whole window. The girl carefully reached her hand out and rapidly pulled the curtain close. "Be more careful," the woman in the qipao warned. "Bad things might happen if the curtain falls." The girl was scared. "What bad things?" The woman looked at her before turning her face away. She ignored her, walked to her bed, and then crawled into bed. "Doctor," Fatty asked as he watched Jiang Cheng move the mattress to the floor, "why are you sleeping on the ground when there's a bed?" Then, Fatty seemed to realize something and pressed, "Do you think the ghost will come out from under the bed too?" "No." Jiang Cheng set up his bed. He patted it a few times until a hole appeared before lying down. "I'm merely used to this." Fatty nodded. Even though he had not been to Jiang Cheng's bedroom in the real world, he remembered Jiang Cheng telling him that he only had a mattress in his bedroom. By the way, Fatty combed his hair. "Doctor, why did you target the man in the suit?" He paused before continuing, "He hasn't been bad to us. I think what you did was meaningless, and you even made an enemy. To be honest, if you didn't do what you did, I don't think we'd be assigned room 404. Jiang Cheng looked at the ceiling. Then, he said slowly, because he was the one who played tricks first. Fatty was shocked as he sat up and asked, "Doctor, what do you mean?" After he got the 4 keys from the woman, he kept them in his left pocket. Jiang Cheng said calmly, "Then, he kept his hand in his left pocket ever since. At the same time, he kept talking to distract us." Fatty felt rather dumb. He asked in alert, "Did he do something to the keys?" "I can't tell for now." Jiang Cheng answered, "I inspected the key. I saw nothing strange on it." Fatty nodded and explained to himself, "Doctor, was that why you sent those people to him to interrupt him?" "Yes. However, I'm not sure if I succeeded or not." Fatty gritted his teeth. "Doctor, this man looks nice on the surface, but he's actually so cunning. He even assigned US room 404 as revenge. I'll take a quick nap." Jiang Cheng ignored him and turned around. "Wake me up after an hour." "Okay." Fatty took the watch Jiang Cheng tossed over. The watch was too tight for his wrist, so he held it in his palm. Even though he was not that sleepy, to prevent himself from accidentally falling asleep, he sat up and wrapped the blanket around him. The night was quiet, like the school was dead. Fatty believed there were no students around them, or it wouldn't be so quiet. Once the 1 hour was up, Fatty left his bed to shake Jiang Cheng awake. Jiang Cheng slept so lightly that he was already awake when Fatty moved from his bed. However, he still waited for Fatty to shake him before he opened his eyes blurrily. After he sat up, he worked his neck and shoulders. He was used to the hard pillow at home, so the cotton pillow made him uncomfortable. "Did anything strange happen?" "No," Fatty answered. "Doctor, don't you worry. I'll wake you up even if I see a cockroach. You should know how alert I am." Jiang Cheng stood up and moved to the door. He didn't stick too close to it. He listened to the movement in the corridor. Then, he returned to his bed and leaned against the wall to listen to the movement next door. "Doctor," Fatty said, "they should be asleep. It's so quiet around here." Jiang Cheng looked at him and said nothing. He took the watch back and put it back on his wrist. Even though Fatty was no longer hungry after eating the chocolate, he was thirsty. Another half an hour passed. Jiang Cheng thought it was about time and prepared to move. He told Fatty that no matter what happened, he had to pretend that he didn't know anything. Fatty was very confused, but he agreed due to his innate trust in Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng pulled out an old coin from the corner of the room. Then, he crawled back to his bed and slowly used the coin to scrape against the wall. He did this again and again. The sound was low, but it was very clear in the quiet night. "What are you doing?" The scraping sound caused Fatty to break out in goosebumps. Jiang Cheng didn't answer and kept scraping. Eventually, sounds came from next door. It was also very soft, but the uneven movement betrayed the person's panic. The next door was room 405, the room of the suited man and the young man with the cap. After a while, the sound of a door opening came from the corridor. It was followed by rapid and uneven footsteps. Hearing that, Jiang Cheng immediately stopped his action. He carefully removed the traces of the scraping off the wall and then tossed the coin back into the inconspicuous corner. However, the footsteps moved away from Jiang Cheng's room 404. Then came the sound of knocking and the voices of the suited man and the young man in the cap. Soon, the corridor became noisy again. Jiang Cheng acted like he had just woken up and slowly opened his door. His face was one of fear as he saw everyone outside his room. "What's wrong?" Seeing Jiang Cheng, the man in the suit was startled, and then he asked curiously, "Did you hear a strange sound?" "Strange sound?" Jiang Cheng scratched his head. "No. I just went to sleep. It's very quiet around here." "No?" The man's face darkened. Then, he added urgently, "What about the fat guy in your room?" "I'm here." Fatty heard him and poked his head out. "Guardian angel, are you looking for me?" In the urgency of the situation, the man didn't care about the term of reference. He asked directly, "I'm asking you, did you hear anything strange?" He paused before adding, "A sound like a spoon scraping against something." Fatty widened his eyes and said, "No. I've been sleeping and heard nothing." Hearing their answers, other than the suited man and the young man in the cap, the others sighed in relief. Then, they looked at the suited man strangely. Only people in room 405 heard that strange sound. Did that mean they were the first to encounter those things? In other words, they would die first. "We're going back," the woman in the cheap house said. Then, she walked back to her room. The girl in the pajama followed her obediently. The three from room 406 saw this and decided to leave. After saying a few things, they ran back to their room too. The room door closed like they were afraid of something. Only the suited man and the young man in the cap remained. Their expressions were dark. Jiang Cheng leaned against the door with confusion. Then, he gasped as if he had just realized something horrid. Is hearing strange noises the condition to trigger the ghosts? How scary that is. Fatty, Jiang Cheng turned around and asked in a hurry, did you really not hear anything? Fatty cooperated fully. Brother, I really didn't hear anything. What about you? I was asleep like the others. I didn't hear anything. Jiang Cheng shrugged and showed an innocent expression. Good. Fatty sighed, then, we won't die. Then, the two closed the door, leaving the suited man and the young man in the cap standing under the dim lights in the corridor. The young man in the cap appeared to be pissed. He raised his fist and darted at room 404 like he wanted to punch the door. However, the suited man moved fast and held him back. The suited man stared at the door of room 404, looked around and whispered to the young man, this isn't right, we should go back. After they returned to their room, the suited man closed the door and locked it. The young man peeled off his cap and tossed it on the bed. Then, he turned around and grumbled, could it be the two in room 404 who are behind the sound? A few deep scars were left on the man's head. The largest one extended from the back of his head to the back of his ear. It was why he wore the cap. He was not as young as he appeared. He looked around 30 but dressed like a kid. The suited man leaned on the wall, and his face was dark. Then, he said, I don't think so. We just got here, and we don't know the conditions that trigger the ghosts. I don't think they have the guts to do something like that. He paused, unless they are mentally challenged. The young man slowly calmed down. He was not dumb. He knew the suited man was right. Then, his face paled. If those sounds were not made by the other players, then he looked at the suited man but couldn't finish his sentence. There was an unwritten world in the nightmare realm. Once the mission started, unless it were absolutely necessary, no one would bring up that term. For now, nothing has happened, so don't scare yourself. The suited man comforted him. He removed the buttons of his suit and the top two buttons of his shirt. Then, he took a deep breath and told his friend, theoretically speaking, room 405 that we chose should be the safest. We have people on both sides. Room 404 sounds unlucky, and bad things might have happened there. Therefore, no matter what, we'll get first-hand news as long as we don't rush into troubles. The man in the cap added, we have to be careful. The thin one from 404 seems to be targeting you. The suited man smiled to reveal his pearly whites and said with derision, I'll be careful and find a chance to make him stay here forever. Since the man said that, the other didn't add anything else. After they discussed the night schedule, the man with the cap went to bed. After all, mental acuity was a deciding factor behind one's survival. Inside room 404, Jiang Cheng didn't go back to bed instantly. Instead, he sat on the chair like he was thinking about something. Fatty felt like it was time for discussion, so he sat up in bed and asked, Doctor, do you think someone will die tonight? In the last mission, the middle-aged man died on the first night. His neck was basically twisted around. Fatty was the first one to find him. He was trying to use the toilet and almost peed his pants. The scary image still occasionally appeared in his mind. I don't think so. Jiang Cheng thought about it and answered him. Fatty grumbled, Doctor, you said we wouldn't be in the nightmare realm tonight, and now, look at us. Jiang Cheng turned around to stare at Fatty. Fatty, I just remembered something important. Doctor, what is it? Fatty nodded naturally. Seeing Jiang Cheng acting so seriously, he believed he had found something crucial. You better be careful when you sleep tonight. You should pull the blanket up to your chin. Jiang Cheng gestured as he spoke. Fatty was scared. He looked around and then wrapped the blanket around him tighter. Then, he asked carefully, Why, Doctor? Jiang Cheng stood up while clapping his hands. That way, the ghost will have a space to strangle your neck when they visit you tonight. Fatty. Perhaps he pitied the shivering Fatty. Jiang Cheng volunteered to stay up to let Fatty sleep first. Then, they could switch. However, Fatty shook his head. Doctor, your story is so invigorating that now, whenever I close my eyes, I can see a ghost coming for my neck. I'm not sleepy at all. Since Fatty insisted, Jiang Cheng compromised. They set a time, and he went to sleep. Fatty sat in bed. He pulled all the blankets around him, but that couldn't stop the chill in his heart. To be honest, he had a bad feeling the moment he stepped into this place. However, even after he looked around, he couldn't explain where that feeling came from. For some reason, Fatty had a feeling that someone would die that night. There was no reason behind it. It was his intuition. Fatty switched about, but he couldn't find a position that felt safe to him. In the end, he propped the pillow up and leaned against the wall. At least he would see the ghost coming for his neck from the front. Soon, Jiang Cheng started to snore. Fatty had to be impressed that he could sleep at a time like this. Compared to room 404 and 405, room 406 was more chaotic. Even though there were 3 in the room, they didn't trust one another. There were only 2 beds in the room, so one had to sleep on the floor or on the chair. There were 2 guys and 1 girl, but it was the girl who got the upper hand. The girl had a sharp ponytail, and her gaze was cutting. If Jiang Cheng were there, he would be able to tell from the woman's rigid posture and the callus between her index finger and thumb that she was a practiced expert. She might have used a gun before. However, the 2 men in the room couldn't tell that. They just knew that they couldn't offend her. This was not her first time in the nightmare realm, or she couldn't be so calm. The woman had the bed next to the window. She leaned against the wall and looked out the window. Perhaps a green face might appear there suddenly. The middle-aged man in the tank top and the other man entered the nightmare realm for the first time. They sat on the edge of the same bed and appeared very anxious.